On the frontier of Margrave, Talleyrand, a terrified woman clutches her child like it's her last lifeline, shouting with the other villagers for someone, anyone, to finally end the monster that's been terrorizing them. Their noise gets snuffed out the second a sharp command slices the air. Shut up. A towering warrior in ornate armor, long light hair streaming, spits pure disgust, sneering that some lowly countryside bumpkins have the nerve to order him. He snaps at his subordinate, Uriel, to silence them right now. Uriel just nods and answers, "Yes, sir." Then a messenger rockets toward the commander, yelling that the Roch squad needs backup now. He tells him they crushed 2 of the 3 demon bears, but the other 3 have been badly injured, and the wounded soldiers, slumped against the wall, only managed to apologize, one insisting the enemy was small fry right up until it wrecked them. The commander's face turns stone cold, and he barks a hard order to the Roch squad to retreat, promising he'll handle everything from here himself. His subordinate wastes no time, snapping back a quick confirmation. He pivots and strides into the woods, and then snap, rustling under the brush, jerks his attention, unveiling the beast's massive, razor-sharp claws. From the shadows, a hulking demon bear lunges out, fangs bared, while the commander plants his feet and refuses to flinch. A cocky grin snaps onto his face as he locks eyes with the beast, saying he's thrilled it finally showed up, and swearing he'll rip it apart limb by limb without wasting a second. His concentration snaps the second, a child's terrified screams tear through the air, and he whips his head around, only to spot a little boy racing through the woods like he's been chased, shocked that he might have been hiding out there the whole time. The boy freezes solid, his face turns into pure panic. Right behind him, the demon looms in close, massive jaws gaping wide as it roars toward him, while a deep growl rumbles out of his own chest. But the commander locks onto his opening, and decides this is exactly what he's been waiting for. He's going to split the bear in half while it's distracted with the child. Then right as his sword comes up, a shock of wrongness hits him, and both the child and the bear stare past his shoulder, frozen solid at the sudden, impossible sight of a modern car. As he gaped at the impossible machine, a weird memory ripped through him, one flash of a young boy sprinting, and then the shock on his face when everything clicked. The memory snapped into focus, then the young man exploded forward, shoving the boy out of the car's path, and the boy gasped as that terrifying thought tore through his confusion. This was it, the last moment before death. He snapped back to the present and saw the demon bear lunge straight at the child, so he thrust his arm out, roaring a warning to get out of the way. With zero time left, he lunged ahead and shoved the boy out of harm's way, just as the beast's claws slammed into him with brutal force. A wave of pure pain slammed into him, and dread filled his chest as he realized he was about to replay the exact same accident that still haunted his mind. From far off, his men could only shout his title as he went down, and the word accident slammed into the night, like a question they couldn't stop asking. He jolted awake in a bed, and a brutal headache crashed through his skull. Then a man at his bedside asked how he felt, looking worried as Justin blinked through the haze. The commander pressed him about his little brother, but the man standing there went blank with confusion. So the attendant decided to play it safe and demanded his name and job, and Justin managed to say it through the fog. Justin Avendier, the commander of the 3rd Knights Order of the Kingdom of Lafios. As he spoke, a fresh wave of memories crashed into his mind. He'd come to the frontier a month ago, after monster activity spiked and kids started getting attacked. Then he jolted back, drenched in sweat, and couldn't stop wondering what in the world those 4 memories were. Then the truth snapped into focus. Naoki Mayo, the oldest of 8, spent his days raising his brothers while his parents stayed out of the picture, and just before he even graduated university, he threw himself into traffic to shield his little brother. 2 sets of memories crashed together, and then everything clicked with a gut punch. He had to have died in that accident, and somehow he'd been reincarnated. He dug up the light novel he used to binge, The Wicked God of Annihilation, with the country's savior, the saint, and remembered how Justin, a total scoundrel, finally got cut down by the protagonist. His whole world spun with this impossible truth. He jerked upright in his sickbed and, voice trembling, asked Oriol if he was dreaming. Oriol turned at once, eyes full of worry, and shot back, "What's wrong?" He shot up and demanded to know if the kid he fought to save was safe. Then Oriol, stunned by the question, told him the demon bear had been wiped out by the commander's counterattack just before he crumpled, and that the child only took a minor injury before being sent straight back to his parents. The moment he heard the news, relief broke across his face in a soft, grateful smile. He was genuinely overjoyed. Oriol's eyes widened at the commander's calm face. She spun to the physician and snapped, asking if he was cert. The commander hadn't taken a hard blow to the head, and the doctor confirmed there was no head wound and that his injuries were already healed, though he warned there might still be some temporary memory trouble. Now it clicked, those cold miles between him and his subordinates weren't random at all. Just like he'd feared, the very hem of this world was nothing but a full-on scoundrel. That hit like a hammer. He crumpled inward, slammed his palm over his face, and couldn't believe how pathetic he'd become. And when Oriole saw the commander's sudden breakdown, she bolted over and demanded what was wrong. As he muttered to himself about the terrible things he must have done, Oriole's worry sank deeper. What if his commander really had suffered a brutal head injury after all? Right then, a knock thundered from the open doorway, and another subordinate stepped in. Arnaud, the new kid, blurted out that he'd heard the commander was awake and swung by with food. Then, to his total shock, the commander only said, "Oh, thanks." Arnaud went dead still, replaying it in his head like, did he really just thank me? Oriole snatched Arnaud aside and hissed that the commander was still drained, then told him they'd shuffle the work assignments for the next few days and spread the word to everyone, and Arnaud nodded along, calling Oriole vice commander, before Oriole rushed back to the commander to push for more rest, only to get another soft, heartfelt thank you in return. He slumped in his quarters, staring into the sheer madness of it all. Now he led the Third Knight's Order, packed with loud commoners, and everyone knew he was supposed to be cold-blooded, even them. It baffled him that saying thank you could blow up his life, and just as the thought hit, a door snapped shut nearby. It all crashed down on him, and with a crushing sigh, he slumped back onto his bed like his bones gave up. He lay there, palms slammed to his forehead, trying to survive the crushing disbelief, because somehow he'd been reborn into the very world inside a novel. His mind snapped back to his old life, no regrets at all for his last move, throwing himself in front of a car to save his brother. The only thing that still gnawed at him was the awful question, what happened to his brother after that crash? And then the thought hit him hard, was his mom and the rest of his siblings absolutely crushed by his sudden death? But those old worries got shoved aside in an instant by a chilling thought about now. If he really was Justin, was he doomed to die the way the villain did in the story? He twisted over, scrambling for logic to beat the panic, because yeah, Justin was a pompous villain, but the person trapped in his body hadn't done a damn thing to deserve a grim end like this. He lay there, helplessness crashing over him as he wondered, what am I even supposed to do next? He finally dropped the doom spiral, told himself worrying would just work up his appetite, then stared at the food waiting for him and went, all right, let's eat, with a gut-grinding growl snapping the decision into place. He scooped up a spoonful, and as he tasted, his face twisted like the truth hit hard. This wasn't awful, but it sure wasn't good either. The flavor felt flat and watery, with no richness or umami, just the basic ingredients doing the bare minimum. Then he went still, eyes bulging as the realization slammed into him. He stares at the plain plate in front of him, wondering if this world's food culture really looks this dull, because he came in with huge hopes for the meals they cooked for the knights, only to suspect they're scraping by on low funds, or that salt and spices are just too pricey for this region. He finally snaps out of the spiral, decides it's not worth tormenting himself, and plans to hit town later to find something that actually sits right and clears his head, because for now, he's been told to rest. As he strides through a quiet, sun-drenched corridor, a sudden scream tears through the air and jolts him, straight out of his calm. The noise drags him straight into the mess hall, and there, his knights are losing their minds, yelling like the end of the world is at breakfast. One impatient brute snaps, is it ready yet? Another snarls that if they don't rush, he'll slice them down too, monsters included, right where they stand. And a third tries to calm the storm, urging everyone to hurry up before things get bloody. Justin steps in with a calm voice, tells them good morning, and orders them to knock it off and stop messing with the cook. Then he plants a firm hand on the loudest knight's head, making him yelp hard at the commander's sudden arrival. His men are left reeling and totally lost. There's no way they expected the commander to greet them, then rip into them like that. Justin shrugs off their shock, turns on the cook, apologizes for the chaos, and demands to be shown the kitchens. The poor cook jolts, then nods fast and agrees. They usher him into a neat, simple kitchen, all lined up and ready for what comes next. The cook's hands hover in panic as he nervously asks if Justin needs anything. Justin just says he wanted to double-check something. While he inspects the produce crates, he finds the quality and quantity are fine, so Justin knows the trouble has to be the seasoning and spices, and then it hits him, a memory flashing back. In that story, Justin was the one who handled the procurement. With his theory proven, he rushes over and apologizes to the cook for the chaos, and for all the complaints his men raked up. Then he wheels on his knights and barks, "Watch your manners when you eat." The whole crew snaps to attention, blurts out fresh apologies, and the cook just stands there, completely stunned. As the commander strides away, the knights huddle and whisper about what just went down. Sure enough, his weird behavior matches what the vice commander warned them about, and one even likens his scolding to a mother's. Right from the far end of the hall, Oriole snaps his voice out, demanding to know why the commander is up and moving so early. He voices his worry, begging the commander to stay put in his room, but Justin shoots back that he's heading into town for a while, so Oriel swallows the decision and only tells him one thing. Be careful because he'll handle the patrol and everything else. He lifts his hand in a simple gesture, like he's silently shouting, I get you and I appreciate it. Now he's back on the packed town streets again, uniform on, heart thumping, trying to soak it all in, even as it hits him how totally different this world feels since he never left home before, and he can't help but wonder if he's really going to survive out here. His mind snaps back to the mission. Sure, the market can line him up with regular food, but the top-tier spices he's hunting, those won't come from anywhere, so he spots a real shop and steels himself to look confident, smiling like he belongs, as he walks in and the doorbell blares his arrival. The shopkeeper's welcome gets strangled mid-sentence the moment he sees what's in front of him. The commander tries to grin warmly, but it warps into a terrifying glare, and Justin watches in horror as he fights to keep his own face from betraying him. Justin's intimidating presence hits the shopkeeper like a wave. He freezes, stammers in shock, and realizes it's the commander of the Vendier Knight's Order. When Justin asks what brings him here, he doesn't beat around the bush at all. He just wants to buy some items. The nervous shopkeeper snaps back that his shelves only carry spices, everyday supplies, and armor, nothing more. Yet Justin just nods like he expected it, says he's still here to look around, and the guy waves him in with a quick, go on then. He starts rifling through the shelves, grabs a jar, and instantly lights up. There are spices he knows by heart, like nutmeg, cinnamon, and cloves, waiting right there for him. For a split second he wonders if this is the kind of cozy setup you get in Japanese light novel worlds, then shrugs it off and enjoys the convenience. His relief evaporates the second he sees the price. The spices are insanely expensive, and what used to be pocket change back in his old world now matches a whole person's yearly income here. Even with the price biting his wallet, he still grabs the purchase, coins clattering on the counter as the shopkeeper blurts out his thanks. Clutching the small bag, Justin then leans in and says he wants to ask one more thing, and you can practically see the shopkeeper's curiosity snap to life. He asks where he can find thyme and rosemary, and the woman at the counter tells him straight up, if he wants herbs, he needs to head to a drugstore. The shopkeeper bows, swears he'll wait, and Justin nods back, promising he'll return again. As he strides through town, the drugstore idea hits him hard. Herbs here are treated like medicine, just like the Chinese remedies back in his old world, and that's the path he decides to try. That realization makes this world feel even more unreal to him. Then he yanks out his magic bag, one of those space-bending wonders that can hold up to 10 times its size, touches it, and drops his fresh buys inside as it glows faintly and swallows them up. He strides in and everyone notices, right away, and then he catches the townsfolk whispering as they spot him for what he is, the commander of the Third Knight's Order. The whispers snap into vicious gossip fast. One woman leans in and asks the other if she's heard the rumor, that he's trying to hit on the crown prince's fiancée, like he's got a death wish or something. Another woman jumps in, swearing the rumor's true. He got kicked out because of it, then tossed into the Third Knight's Order as a last-ditch move to get him gone, while the first woman can't even believe he'd have the nerve to mess with the crown prince. Their contempt spills over for the whole order. They sneer that the Third Knight's guys have always been known for their awful manners, and insist they've only gotten worse ever since he took over as commander. Suddenly, one of the women lets out a shocked gasp and hisses for everyone to go silent, while Justin whips his eyes back over his shoulder. Sure, he looks strong enough to wipe out monsters alone, but the real fear hits them all at once. That unspoken gut feeling, he might be the monster. He turns away, eyes heavy with exhaustion, and admits to himself that they absolutely despise him, though he can't really blame them, because the Third Knight's Order is, no joke, a violent pack. Standing all by himself in the paved square, he lets out a heavy sigh, because he finally sees it. This isn't just about his own honor, he has to rebuild a whole Knight's Order's reputation. He strides up the stone steps, boots clacking against the pavement, with the drugstore dead ahead. Then he hears it, a nearby voice begging for help, swearing they'll pay for the one thing they need to survive. The truth behind the commotion hits you like a punch. An embarrassed shopkeeper is snapping at two little kids, swearing his no is absolute. Justin cuts in, asking if something's wrong, and when the shopkeeper whips around, he freezes, because he instantly recognizes the commander from the Third Knight's Order. He quickly blurts that the kids keep swarming him for herbs, even though they've got no money, and while the shopkeeper tries to shoo them off, Justin listens in silence with a hand on his chin, thinking hard about what's really going on. Then his focus snaps off the man and lands on the two kids huddled together, trembling with fear. He jabs a finger at them and demands to know why they need the herbs, right now. They glance at each other, frozen, unable to find the words. The boy finally blurts it out. No food, no money, and their mom's sick. He snaps that her health got crushed trying to cover for their father, and for a second all you can see is her coughing weakly in bed. Justin keeps the story rolling. His father, a craftsman, got dragged into war with the monsters that started showing up more and more, got badly hurt on the front lines, and now all he does is drown his pain in drink, while Justin just listens, swallowing every bite of their family's tragedy. His face hardens into pure resolve, and he snaps his head back to the shop owner, demanding he hand over the herbs the kids need, plus a few more he calls out by name, and promising he'll cover every single coin. The children just freeze, staring in total shock. The shop owner presses him, "Are you really sure?" But Justin waves it off, saying that if it costs a little more, it's basically a tip. Then he smiles at the kids and tells them to relax, until he adds, "There's one thing I want in return." A sly little smile tugs at his lips as he glances down at them, and he asks so calmly you almost miss the steal in it, "Take me to your father." That little girl stared up at him with wide, worried eyes and asked if he was about to do something mean to her. Justin's smile stretched as he shot his hands up in a calming, wait gesture, swearing he'd never do anything like that. As night swallowed the city, he kept walking, then froze. He realized the conversation had stolen his sense of time. The talk with the kid's father hit hard. He spilled his tragic past, explained how an old injury from his army days turned into crippling complications, and how he couldn't work anymore. Ashamed to keep dragging his wife down, he started drowning his pain in alcohol, and Justin knew that if he wrote the man off as pathetic, it would only crush the family even more. He couldn't believe it. This guy was good at heart, yet the military injury that knocked him out of work earned him zero compensation, and that outrage lit a new fire in him as soon as he got back. He'd demand an audience with the Margrave immediately. He spun back to the kids, soothed the boy with a gentle pat on the head, and urged them to look after their parents, while the girl beamed and thanked him as Mr. Commander, and her brother chimed in too, calling him the Knight's Order's big brother. Their heartfelt thanks kept pouring out, and they shouted for their big brother again and again. As he watched them disappear, grit hardened his face like steel. He clenched his fist and braced himself. Yeah, he could still do it. He could still flip the whole outcome. Alone on the street, he stared ahead and questioned why he was even there. Because if Justin Cross was going to end this one-way route to ruin, he'd have to take a straight path himself, and that final moment would be a long, long time coming. He gazed up at the starry sky and accepted the weight of his new role, because yeah, he was officially the big brother. He burst back to the lodgings, saw the building empty, and for a split-second relief hit, then duty slammed back in as commander. He barked, sharp and unshakable, "Get ready for mock combat, come on." His command got obeyed on the spot. Inside the training hall, swords slammed and clanged hard, echoing off the stone walls as the Knights of the Third Order went all out in ruthless mock combat. He leaned in to watch the sparring, a small smile tugging at his lips, and thought, "Man, it's impressive how hard they're training even this late *." Then the clash of steel snapped and echoed with every strike. Cassius's calm approval got ripped apart when chaos erupted. One knight screamed that Cassius was hurt, and another insisted the blade had slipped during the block. Cassius clutched his arm and tried to wave it off as nothing, but his comrade wouldn't let it go and demanded they fetch a healer. Right before anyone else could even react, the commander dropped to his knees by the fallen knight, panic blazing in his eyes, and snapped orders to Cassius to lift the wound above the knight's heart, now. He took control, barking for Oriole to fetch something he could use to bind, then shoved the rest of the knights back into training mode. Cassius snapped his gaze up, and Startle's piercing focus slammed into every commander like a lightning strike. While the other knights stared, Justin grabbed Cassius's attention and told him they were headed for the treating room, even offering his shoulder to lean on. Cassius insisted he was okay, but Justin was already yanking a bandage tight over the wound, cutting him off with a stern reminder that healing magic couldn't bring back the blood he'd already spilled. As the injured knight kept fighting, something in the commander finally cracked. Justin yanked Cassius by the chin, eyes blazing with fierce, near-desperate fury, and screamed at him to just listen to his big brother. The outburst slammed the breath out of him, sweat poured down his brow. Those words hung in the air, and then shock hit his face as realization finally clicked, leaving him battling his own ridiculous confession, "Big brother." The next morning, Justin Devendier jolts awake with a huge yawn, and the early sunlight blasts through his quarters like a spotlight. He strolls down a bright, sunlit corridor, and a trainee drops into a deep bow, shouting a booming, "Good morning, Commander Justin," as Justin casually shoots back the greeting and gives a quick, warm thanks for the morning. He keeps going, arms stretched behind his head, and thinks, "If I hadn't been reincarnated, I'd be stuck packing lunchboxes for my brothers right now." But it's way too early to see a Margrave, so he flips his plans on the spot. With his mind made up, he strides down the long hallway, determined to drop in for the morning training session too. At the training grounds, they stared at a squad of knights already trading blows, swords crashing together in the morning air. One night, the trainees start whispering to each other. Then someone blurts out, "Cassius, does your arm still hurt?" Cassius snaps the injured arm into a flex and grins, saying it's totally fine now, and credits the lightning-fast recovery to the healing magic they used. Justin strides up to another knight and blurts, "What was that all about?" The knight's jaw hangs open, and he starts to stammer. Then Justin presses him on the moment that threw them off while he was patching Cassius up. The knight finally admits it was thanks to the commander's flawless first aid, and just then, back behind them, an instructor starts lecturing the seated Cassius as the other knights murmur in shock. He whips back to Justin, eyes dead serious, and blares out what he just heard. "Just listen to what your big brother says." Justin freezes at the words, while Cassius, on his own night watch, smirks like he already knew it was coming. Afterward, Cassius and his companion on the ground just tried to catch their breath, and one of them blurted how stunned he was, because he'd never once pictured the commander would actually say something like that. Justin, still in his training gear, props his hand to his chin and stares at the mess in front of him like it's impossible, because honestly, who would believe them? Then a quiet memory flickers back. A calm, familiar-looking figure leaning in and whispering, "Thanks." At the training grounds, the knights slipped into talk about their commander's weird new habit. Cassius admitted that Justin didn't just thank him, he actually offered his shoulder for support, like a complete reversal from the curt dismissals he's always thrown. He replayed that moment in vivid detail, saying that both he and the old healer were completely stunned when Justin insisted that the caches had to be the first ones to offer thanks. The other knights stared in disbelief, and some couldn't help laughing. One swore it was impossible for that ruthless commander to ever say something like that. Another joked that he'd finally woken up to love, but the third knight felt sick at the thought, goosebumps crawling up his arms. Their laughter got chopped off when a heavy boot thudded onto the nearby stone, and quiet as a question, "Oh" made that little "oh" sound. Between two trainees, Commander Justin Devontier stepped out, arms crossed, and flashed that unsettling smirk. Then he jabbed at them, teasing that they were somehow taking it easy, while everyone else got roasted during morning training. With a low chuckle, he smiled and said their session was perfect, right as he noticed their basics had gotten rusty. Then he slammed down a new challenge, 1,000 swings for everyone who'd been talking. Justin then singled out Cassius and tapped his arm, saying Cassius' arm had just healed, so he was off the hook, yet the other knights erupted, screaming that it was unfair. Justin's grin cracked wider as he grabbed Cassius by the shoulder, then leaned in and told him straight up, long-distance running would forge stronger legs and a tougher lower back. Cassius nodded, and Justin kept it up with a sharp stare, flat-out demanding, in a totally menacing way, that he better be happy with this new deal. As the commander dragged that doomed knight away, everyone else just stood there, watching, while one guy grumbled about the poor fellow's fate, and Cassius, meanwhile, could barely manage a stammered "thank you." Justin snapped to the remaining trainees and ordered them to keep pushing until lunch. Then he slumped over to a dejected Cassius, patted his back, promised him a reward for going harder, and told him to keep his eyes on what was coming next, right after. After that brutal training, the knights collapse in grumbling pain. One can barely lift his arms, another moans that his legs feel like they've turned to stone. Then the dark-haired knight snaps at them to mind their mouths, and with one thing they all agree on, they're starving, so they rush for the cafeteria. They burst into the busy hall, and one of them spots it fast. Those knights on patrol have already started devouring their meals, so he hypes the rest to grab their food right now. Right as they press on, a sweet, mouth-watering aroma hits them, and there are the other knights, chowing down with big, happy grins like nothing could go wrong. They can't help but wonder if the place is serving some secret special menu, and then boom, Commander Justin Vendier, now dressed down in casual clothes, steps out of nowhere and greets them. The moment Cassius spots him, he blurts out for his promised reward from the training. Then the commander just nods calmly, hands him a bowl of soup and says, "Try it." Cassius hesitates and takes a sip. He shrugs and says it's the same old soup with no real payoff, and Justin gives a quiet, faint smile, "Relax," as he nonchalantly rolls a tiny dark sphere in his palm. His face hardens as he finally unveils the real prize, one lone peppercorn held in his hand. He says that's the reward, and Cassius's eyes widen because he knows it at once, Surrogate. Then the commander starts crushing peppercorns in a mortar and pestle, and the next night someone watches in pure shock, blazes out, and can't believe it, pointing out that it's black pepper. Murmurs ripple through the night as they chew on the news. One guy blurts that he's only ever heard of a pepper, and another snaps the math. The amount they're using would cost a whole gold coin, basically a month's wages. After seasoning the soup, Justin thrusts the bowl to Cassius and orders, "Eat." Then he grabs another bowl, hands it to the head chef, and tells him to pass it to the other knights, and the chef nods and agrees. Cassius takes one spoonful, and his eyes snap wide with shock. he blurts that it tastes nothing like usual and that it's absolutely incredible. Commander Justin Avendier just grins at their shock, saying he only cranked up the soup's salt and tossed in basil, then asks if they really think a killer meal can't be the perfect fuel for motivation. He snaps his gaze to his vice commander, Oriel, laying out his logic. Knights drain the nutrients they need every time they sweat, so they have to be replaced to keep them sharp, steady, and moving at full power. Oriel rubs his chin and finally nods, admitting the commander's point hits the mark. Chef, right there beside them, can't stop staring. He totally gets why pepper boosts the flavor, but the idea of tossing in leaves that act like medicine never even crossed his mind. And when he glances over, Oreo's just looking down, swamped with shame for his own narrow way of thinking. He starts to panic and blurts out that he doesn't deserve compliments like that. Then Justin stays cool, straight up disagreeing, telling the chef he's the one who should be thanked for how the guy's kept them fed with a steady diet even while money's tight. Justin whips back toward the gathered knights and fires off a bold proposal. Do you want delicious meals from here on out? Cassius erupts with a thunderous, obvious, no doubts yes. She grins like she owns the night and lays out his plan. If the night ship docks just once a month so they can buy their own drinks, the food budget finally climbs, and that means the head chef can unleash his full skill without panicking over costs, so he hands the decision to them. The knight erupts in agreement. Cassius barks that there's no point even thinking about it, and everyone else jumps on board, ready to chip in. Just like that, it sounds settled, and Justin turns to Oriol, pressing him. Is he really against the idea? Oriol jumps in, saying he's all for the plan, then offers to push the fundraising paperwork through the administrative clerk, while Justin gives him an approving glance, visibly grateful. With everything finally settled, Justin waves them in and tells everyone to sit, yet Cassius suddenly grips his stomach as it roars, snapping to his commander that the seasoning isn't cutting it, he started. After another long night, she playfully smacks Cassius on the back of the head for his outburst. He just shrugs it off, grinning at his bowl as he declares it looks great and that he's not going to be asked twice to eat. Right as Cassius reached for his first bite, Justin Avendier's voice snapped through the air, killing the moment. He grabbed Cassius's attention and said, "Hold up, something comes first." Cassius guessed it was time to wash up, but Justin shook his head hard and insisted, face set and firm, that Cassius had to thank the food before he even ate. He said it was the only way to thank the cooks and the ingredients themselves, because without that, they wouldn't get to eat. And then, one more night, someone overheard it and snapped that saying a prayer before meals was a custom only rich kids ever bothered with. The other knights huddled together in whispers, and one swore their commander felt wrong. Another cracked a laugh and confessed he hadn't prayed since he was a kid, but still, no matter how much they resisted, they agreed they'd have to do it. Obeying the command, the knight shut his hands together and stumbled into a heartfelt, awkward prayer of thanks to the one who brought the food. In unison, every knight lowered their heads and erupted in roaring gratitude, and Justin watched from the edge with his arms crossed. Once the ritual wrapped up, they dug in, and Cassius's eyes went wide with pure shock at how incredible the flavor was, while his companion just smiled and savored every single bite like it was heaven. A look of deep thought flickered across Justin's face as he watched them, and suddenly he remembered. This tradition was exactly like the one back in Japan. His reflection was shattered the moment his aide burst in and said Commander Justin's request for an audience with a Margrave had been approved. Then the man froze, hesitating before he could finish. The story snaps to the breathtaking view of Margrave Toleran's towering manor, so grand it feels like it could swallow the sky. Clad in a crisp formal uniform, Justin strides through the manor's huge, silent hall, totally thrown by the summons today, because part of him instantly reads the play. This is exactly how someone tries to shove a nuisance out the door, and it all clicks once he thinks about his connection to her. Her mind snaps to the real reason for this summons, Diana Tolerand. She's the Margrave's only daughter, and more than that, the Crown Prince's fiancée. He replayed the story he knew all too well, where his counterpart, burning with hatred for the prince, dragged Diane into a relationship with him. This road ends in tragedy for her, tagged as nothing more than a sub-heroine. She snaps and takes her own life, and just like that, her story gets cut off. As he walked, he grimaced at what that story called Justin, because that guy was pure scum. He vowed to set the record straight, not just with his main business, but also with her. Luckily, the real Justin was only starting to crawl into her life, not fully tangled there yet. An attendant eyed him, then said, "Lord Tolerand told me to guide you," and Justin just nodded. Then they took off down the path. Attendant's knuckles rapped hard against a heavy door. Then he declared loud and clear that Lord Justin de Vendier had arrived, right here, right now. Inside, a rough, booming voice barked at them to come in. When Justin stepped into the room, he introduced himself with full respect, then thanked the Margrave straight to his face, making sure his gratitude didn't wait. Right away, he spotted Margrave Tolerand parked behind a massive desk, and his uniformed guards stood on either side, casting hard, hostile glares straight at him like he didn't belong. He sunk behind his desk, 3 personal guards looming on both sides, and he jabs a finger toward the chair, while Justin takes one look at the brutal security and can't help wondering why the Margrave thinks he's so deadly, right here in a stinking office. Justin bows low in response, and with that gesture, he shouts his thanks from the depths of his heart. He straightened up with a sly little smirk, convinced his polite act would blow their minds, because they'd never seen him behave this well before, and when 2 guards went wide-eyed, his private amusement was proven right. Justin turns to the Margrave and points out that, sure, the man looks calm, but his guards are stacked up tight like nothing gets past them. Justin leans in and says he's come to report a problem he found in town that demands action, and the moment his voice hits the air, the Margrave scoots forward and demands to know what this urgent trouble could be. Now settled in his seat, Justin snaps into the real issue. The Margrave's land and the recent, shameless collapse of public order just keeps getting worse and worse. With his fingers steepled, the Margrave urges him to spell it out. He keeps going, and the whole town starts sounding convinced that their lord is nothing but cruel, treating his people like they don't matter. And that bombshell hits hard when one of the guards snaps forward, demanding what Justin just said. Guard Clement explodes, roaring at Justin for speaking that boldly to his lord, until Margrave Vondir calmly lifts a hand and cuts him off, telling Clement to stop so Lord Vondir can finish, and Justin immediately turns the focus to a burning question. What happens under the rules for conscripted citizens who get injured fighting monsters and carry the damage for life? Margrave lays out his rules: pay military compensation only to the soldiers who truly answer to him, toss the injured off duty because he can't drag them into a fight, and if they're in the militia, they just head right back to their old jobs. Justin's sharp gets even sharper. He fires back, asking with real respect if that policy is genuinely any different from calling those people disposable pawns. Then he drops his final bombshell, saying he just met a former craftsman, and the craftsman's family too. After that man got spared from conscription when a brutal injury left him hurt, and the Margrave, completely thrown off, can only repeat Justin's words as a stunned, baffled question. Justin keeps telling the story of the injured craftsman's family, how he turned bitter because he couldn't lift a trade anymore, until his wife stepped in, wrecked her own health doing it, and the poor kids, starving, had to beg a pharmacist for medicinal herbs just to keep their mother alive. Margrave Talhern admits that he did buy them medicine because Justin pushed him to, but he snaps that a quick bandage won't cure what's really wrong. Then he fires back. Is it so cruel to force people into conscription and act like I don't know anything after? Margrave leans in and presses Justin. So you want me to pay pensions to every injured man until he's finally happy? That plan is a fantasy, and it'll drag this whole land into decline. Justin shuts the idea down at once. So he drops the excuses and pitches real solutions: free clinics in the slums, and jobs people can do even with injuries. Then he slams the question: why can't the Margrave save his people this way? The Margrave reclines, eyes razor-sharp, and demands what those plans mean for Justin personally. Justin snaps back that there's nothing in it for him at all, because the real payoff is for the people of the land, or maybe even for the Margrave. After a beat, Talleyrand looks like he's finally giving in. He understands, and he'll cook up a solution fast. With his eyes shut, Justin fires off a grateful thanks for even trying. But the Margrave's face changes instantly. He throws in a warning, and admits he'll hear any logical plan, yet something about this mess has him completely stumped. His voice drops as he finally spills what he's been suspicious about, and he can't wrap his head around why a guy like Justin would bring up something like that unless there's a hidden agenda. Then he says he already heard the truth about how Justin's been treating his daughter. Hearing that, Justin's face tightens, and he goes straight for the Margrave's real fear, saying he'll never speak or deal with Miss Diane again, and even swears on his family's name to make it undeniable. The Margrave studies him with a sneer and says it'd be perfect if Justin could actually keep that vow. Then, as the Margrave turns away, Justin realizes with a jolt that the Margrave's total distrust won't budge, and he accepts it as truth. Elsewhere, a young, light-haired woman clenched her heart as she weighed everything, because even if she stopped poking at Diane, she still knew the main heroine was destined to show up any minute. She caught a vision of that foretold saint, glowing, unstoppable, rising to stomp out the evil choking the world, and the crazy part was that the main heroine asterisk was asterisk her. Meanwhile, Justin Vendier stared at the same prophecy from a whole new angle, replaying a novel he'd read, where Diane was already dead before the saint ever showed up, clearing the way for the crown prince and the saint to finally unite, no roadblocks in sight. He couldn't stop asking what would happen to a world where Diane actually survives, and if fate would let her find real happiness. With those thoughts burning in his head, he marched straight to Margrave Tolerand and laid out his theory, first asking whether the Margrave had noticed the sudden monster surge, and claiming it had to be the wick of God at work, meaning the saint would show up any day. The Margrave admitted the monsters were rising, but snapped back, "So what does this have to do with my daughter?" He kept going, admitting the ugly truth. If a saint ever showed up, Diane would probably be the one who, and then he fired a brutal question. If all saints were supposed to marry into the royal family, what would that mean for Diane? The Margrave snapped in furious denial, screaming that none of it could be real, and that there was zero proof his daughter wasn't the saint. When the Margrave exploded, Justin just stayed ice calm, saying the answer was crystal clear. The crown prince would probably cast Dionycide, and that would leave her no choice but to slip away quietly, a terrifying thought that crushed down hard on Talaran. He shot up from his seat, tugging his uniform into place, and admitted it was all guesswork for now, but he still insisted the Margrave had to know what was going on. His words shoved the Margrave into a spiral of suspicion, and a bead of sweat formed on his temple as he stared hard, trying to figure out what Justin Avendier was really up to. Justin stood by the door and dropped a calm, convincing explanation. No hidden agenda, just raw regret for his past mistakes, asking for forgiveness for the way he'd acted so disrespectfully. He ends his talk with the Margrave and admits straight up that words can't buy trust, so he swears he'll show what he means from here on out, then asks to be dismissed. As the heavy doors start to shut behind him, a guard steps up to Margrave Tolerand, who stays planted at his desk, and all he gives back is a blunt yes. Alone in that sudden, dead quiet moment, the Margrave's composure shatters, his face tightens, his eyes go distant, and he blurts out the question, was that man really the Vondir he thought he knew? While Justin strides down the Nate hallway, a smug smirk slices across his face as he vows to himself that he's made his first move, yanking his life forward into the future he's already planning. In the kitchens of the Third Knight's Order, they spread herbs across paper, because every second matters. They pin down time to chase the fishy stink away, grab rosemary to punch up the meat, and toss laurel leaves into stews to make the whole pot smell like a dream. Right after that, a young kitchen boy steals himself and asks the Knight Commander, Justin Devontier, how he could know all of this, and the nearby cook can't believe it either. He never even imagined medicinal herbs could end up in a dish. He tells them he stumbled onto all this while studying medicinal herbs, but then he leans in and admits the truth. Back in a past life, he cooked for his family every single day. With a sly smirk, he says you never know which skills will save the day, and the boy is left staring, completely blown away. Later on, his vice commander, Oriel, shows up. After the greetings, he gets straight to it and tells him they've tallied the food costs, and that every order member has given their okay to deduct 2 silver coins from each person's monthly salary. Justin keeps the math rolling in his head, figuring the total lands at about 1 gold coin, even if he knows it's a shaky estimate. And then, after weighing it, he nods and says they'll just have to make do with that budget. Then he lays out the whole plan. An administrative officer will handle the shopping, but only after the cooks send over a list of what they need. Oriol balks at it, asking if piling this job onto the usual provision management won't just turn into a total headache. He breaks down his reasoning. This isn't about trying to scare anyone. It's about knowing that a mountain of money can lure even the best people, so he warns that if any of the members' contributions are embezzled and caught, the culprit might count themselves lucky to only get a beating. To make sure nobody ever suspects, he orders one of their knights to tag along with the shopper, and Oriol instantly gets it. If they want the perfect cover, they'll need the most intimidating guy they've got. The vice commander fires off a question, so, is this knight basically here to guard us? Justin nods and says, yeah, but there's more. He explains that their presence will also keep merchants from gouging them, then turns to Oriol and orders her to pick the right person for the job. Oriol doesn't even blink. He jabs a finger straight at his commander and declares that Justin is the perfect pick, because Justin knows exactly what they're buying and there's zero chance he'll pocket a single coin. Justin freezes, then blurts out, is this about my scary face? Oriol snaps it down flat. With a worn-out look on his face, he watched his vice commander, Oriol, finish his argument. Then Oriol grinned and insisted that if the famous commander himself shopped in person, every merchant would deal fairly and stop the overcharging cold. Ripping off his armor and sliding into a simple turtleneck, he finally caved. Fine, I'll go. But the second he said it, Oriol snapped up the roll at once, offering to take over the forest patrol, pointing out that Justin had just clocked off and needed to rest. She'd cover the town patrol instead. Oriol shot a sharp look at his subordinate, teased him about how fast he made that call, and wondered if he was craving good food that badly. Then Oriol just rubbed the back of his head and shrugged. So, what do you think? Justin immediately clocked the truth. The vice commander had realized the budget wasn't cutting it, so he turned around and shouted for an admin officer named Aller. From the second-story window, he called down to the head chef and confessed that he'd planned to hand the negotiations to the chef from the very start, then told him to weigh every item he was about to buy. The chef lit up and agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, down in the town streets, a squad of third-order knights strolled through their patrol like it was nothing. One of them even stretched and sighed that they were lucky to be out for a simple walk, while Simon cut in, "No, it's a patrol," then admitted, yeah, it was still way better than hunting and culling monsters. Just as the talk was getting good, Commander Justin burst in. Right behind him came an administrative officer, and in front of Simon, Gaspert, and Arno, he laid down the law. They weren't there to fool around, and they'd better carry themselves with the dignity and self-control a Knight Order member demands. As the commander kept marching forward, one knight leaned in and muttered to his buddy about how Justin had been acting totally off. And honestly, it felt hilarious, since the commander was the same guy who usually preached knightly dignity and drilled anyone with a disrespectful attitude with a lecture. By the time night settled in, everyone figured out the commander had come to shop. One guy groaned that they could finally slack off, while another lit up and swore the food was about to level up starting tonight, since the commander wouldn't haul an administrative officer along for nothing. Hearing it all, Justin just muttered to himself, "I don't know." Their excitement exploded into cheers, and they started yelling at their commander to hurry. Then right after, they pleaded for him to breathe and calm down. He skidded to a stop in front of the building, whipped around to Florent, the administrative officer, and demanded to know if he knew the pharmacy's owner, confirming the pharmacy was one of their suppliers, then thrust a list into Florent's hands and told him to take over the business talks. Florent didn't hesitate for a second. While he strode down the market street, a familiar high-pitched voice snapped his attention. Mark, a young boy, waving like crazy and yelling "Big Brother," with his sister Chloe right beside him. He halted to greet them, asking if they were heading out for a walk, and the knight itself seemed stunned, because Mark explained that once their mother had recovered, their older brother finally had way more time to be with them. The kids started talking over each other, saying they'd seen him before, under weird, wild circumstances, and Mark chimed in with a grin. Their dad had turned way kinder, working harder at his job, and it was all because their big brother made it happen. The good news hit, and a warm smile blossomed across his face. Then he gently patted both children on the head, beaming like he'd just won with them. The sight of it, his soft warmth, rocked every one of his subordinates watching from afar, and they just stood there, jaws hanging, stunned that their commander was actually smiling, and gently patting a kid's head. Even Florent started to wonder if his glasses were playing tricks on him. As he pushed on, he caught bits of whispering from the townsfolk nearby, spilling his terrifying reputation like everyone already knew exactly who he was. He spun back to the kids, blurting out that he had to handle his work first, then promised he'd come see them again with a souvenir, and Mark's face lit up like a firework. And just like that, they said their goodbyes, kids waving like crazy, shouting, "Bye-bye, Big Brother," while he lifted a hand high in one last farewell. He spun around and strode off, his whole posture suddenly going rigid as a board. The curly-haired knight stood there, staring, amazed at how the kids clung to the commander like he was their real brother, especially with how brutal the training ground's reputation was. The knight tiptoed forward, whispering that the commander might be embarrassed. Then Justin whipped around, rage blazing across his face, snapped that it wasn't true, and ordered the knight to erase what he'd just seen, while the poor subordinate recoiled in pure terror. He clenched his teeth as a hot blush flooded his face, stuck in a painful tug-of-war inside his own head, because having Justin's memories meant he finally understood what it all connected to, yet being Big Brother in front of those kids right now made his soul want to crawl out of his body. Shaking off that rush, he snapped his gaze back to his subordinates, barked in a razor-sharp voice, and ordered them to stay quiet and not start trouble with anyone passing by. Everyone instantly got the message. Then he turned to his administrative officer. "All right, Florent, let's go. This was just step one because being a big brother, yeah, it definitely wasn't over yet." The pharmacy door blasts open with a sharp jolt, screaming, "Intruder," and the stout proprietor snaps his head up from his work, only to freeze when Knight Commander Vendier walks in beside his associate. Or he blurts out nervously, "What can I do?" And before panic has time to grow, Commander Vendier straightens up with total confidence, swivels to his admin officer Florent and hands it off. "You take it from here." He lunges forward to stop them, trying to explain that it's just their shop. Then he shoves over a paper with a list of extra items they've got to deliver to the night barracks, and the owner snatches it to review. Florence stops him mid-sentence, clarifying that the order isn't for the infirmary at all, it's meant to go straight to the kitchen, not the other potions. The owner blurts out that he's totally lost on where they're headed, and Von Deer leans in close, voice dropping low, saying he's got a fresh plan for the herbs, one that'll mean ordering them nonstop, as long as the owner keeps performing like he should. His face hardens into a creepy grin as he demands, "Can I trust you?" And the pharmacy owner instantly freezes, stammering through sweat, insisting the commander can count on him completely. From a nearby window, two Avendir's knights clock the scene. One smirks that the pharmacy owner is shaking because the commander's bullying him for a cheaper deal, and the other nods, saying, "Yep, that's the terrifying commander we're used to." Biden shoots back with a counterpoint. He says ever since the commander got injured, it's like something shifted from the kindness he showed a kid to that "big brother" remark right after. But his companion brushes the whole idea off like it's nothing. On his first night, Simon scoffs at the whole idea. He yanks his cheeks into a grotesque, forced grin, trying to copy the kind smile he thinks Von Deer wears, and all the while he sneers that the commander's real laugh hits way more sinister than anything. His mocking laughter dies instantly when a calm, chilling voice speaks right behind him. Commander Von Deer demands to know what kind of smile that is, then asks to see it too. Simon goes rigid, stammers that he was just joking. His grip clamps down on the knight's head, and a scream of agony rips through the air, leaving the other men frozen in stunned silence, because they're starting to wonder if this brutal monster is really their commander, the same man who used to be gentle. He finally lets the man go, and he strides off across the town square, grinning like he just pulled off the steal of the century with those low prices. The leftover knights huddle and whisper. One swears that when the commander leans in with a smile like that, you don't talk back. You just stay quiet. As he keeps moving, Florin barrels up to him, and the commander lays it out. His successful negotiation wasn't some threat at all. It was just a smart deal built on guaranteed bulk orders and steady, regular purchases. He then admits the truth. Running the finances for a whole huge household is brutally hard, and if you want leverage, you better use it with clear ethical limits. Then he tells Florent to push hard for the afternoon training, and as he keeps walking, he catches a knight bursting with excitement about food, while his stomach grumbles like it's impatient. That loud, rowdy vibe makes the commander think of Cassius, and his face tightens just a little the moment he hears them. His attention snaps to a loud commotion up ahead. Something in front of the barracks is roaring way too much for comfort. He strode up to the gates, where Knight spots him and demands to know what went down. Knight closes in on him, and his voice cracks with pure panic as he blurts out that the vice commander, and the rest, are fighting monsters right now. In the blink of an eye, he surges into a dead sprint straight for the infirmary. He slams the door wide open with a thunderous crash, yelling, "Tell me, are you all okay?" Inside, he's hit with a grim sight. Several of his men, including Vice Commander Oriol, are sprawled in their beds, wounded, while a doctor stands guard as the commander finally takes in the full horror of his injured knights. The doctor waits in the infirmary, greets him like he's back from hell, and the grim commander wastes no time. He demands to know how bad it is. The doctor snaps back that everyone's hurt, but nobody died. Vandiers charges up to his vice commander's bedside and finds Oriol awake, wrapped in bandages. Oriol blurts out an apology for being seen like this, but Vandiers waves it off, orders him to stay put, and presses hard for what really happened. Oriol starts telling everything. After the commander storms off, he takes a squad straight into the eastern forest, a place packed with monster sightings, and the second they cross the line, monsters hit them in numbers way beyond what they ever expected. He shuts his report and says they somehow pulled off the win, but their battered state is the price, and Vandiers, arms crossed, leans in, nodding like, "Good work, you even came back alive." With a grim look, Oriol snaps that the monster's been acting weird lately. Vandiers drops a calming hand on his shoulder, tells him to rest for now, and vows he'll dig into it himself, and Oriol nods quietly, agreeing. Bursting out of the infirmary, the commander spots Florent in the corridor and snaps, without a second thought, "Send a messenger to the Margrave now." With a firm, unshakable voice, he lays out exactly what the message says, then calls for cooperation, pointing to unmistakable signs that a monster stampede is about to explode. This blow slams Justin with a past nightmare. Years ago, a monster stampede erupted in the Margrave's domain, and he'd once swaggered like an idiot, thinking the Third Night Order alone could crush it. Blinded by his arrogance, he charged at an unstoppable threat with too few troops, turning it into a massacre, and Oriol was one of the first to drop. Even after he finally stopped the stampede, the Third Night Order's name was shattered, plain and simple, and then the real nightmare hit. A subordinate of the hostile Crown Prince was installed as vice commander, slipping through the shadows to tighten the noose on a broken Justin. He strode forward like every step fought his past failure, and he knew this second right here would flip everything, because if he wanted to change the future that kept hunting him, he couldn't let a single mistake slip. His journey shoved him right up to a huge window, staring down at a hushed town glittering under starlight. Then he froze, eyes distant, and slammed his knuckles hard against the wooden frame. Right when it happened, a man with short, light hair slipped into view in a crisp white cloak. Then an attendant blared his arrival. Lord Clement, the Knight Commander of the Margrave domain, was here. In a plush room like it's built for secrets, Justin Devontier sits across from Lord Clement, the Knight Commander of the Margrave's domain, then shoots him a tense hand gesture and starts thanking him for showing up. Clement snaps upright and cuts him off, brushes away the pleasantries, and demands to know what that message is really saying, then hammers Justin about the promise to prove his sincerity with actions, and he's furious as he questions why he's suddenly hearing that a monster stampede is about to hit. The commander stays locked in his seat, face stone cold, and then, without a flicker, tells Clement that moments ago his men clashed with monsters in the eastern forest, got crushed in the fight, and had to fall back with everyone injured. Then he swivels the question right back at Clement, daring him to say if he really plans to burn his soldiers on what he calls pure nonsense. The Climate is left speechless, blazing with disbelief that even the elite Third Night Order got crushed, and Justin keeps rolling his report. These monsters don't move one by one, they swarm in packs. The activity is wildly abnormal, and yeah, they seem to hate the people they're hunting, but they still can't deny how deadly those fighters are. He refused to back down, gripping the brutal truth and grilling it, asking if these really were the signs of a monster stampede, because it hadn't hit their lands in over 100 years. Justin snaps off the old precedent and asks why a century of silence should matter now, then bangs the table. Nothing today is promised for tomorrow, so they need to start checking and repairing the city walls right away. The Knight Commander erupts, shouting that Justin better explain what he'll take the blame for if his predictions fall flat, but Justin doesn't flinch. He just keeps going, saying they should reshuffle their defenses and team up with the Third Night Order, then drives the point home by repeating one word. Responsibility. He tells them straight up, this is just the deadliest possible scenario from where they stand. Then he lays out countermeasures, with a quiet sting in his words. A Margrave who knows history won't ever dismiss a monster stampede. Clement grumbles, caught with nothing to say, while Justin steamrolls the logic. Both moves pay off for the domain no matter how things turn out. The city walls will need repairs eventually, and the soldiers deploying now counts as training. With that, he jerks upright from his chair, saying he gets the point and will take it straight to the Lord himself. Then he glares at Justin and snaps that he'd better not push past his authority until they get an answer. In a grand, quiet room, Justin Devontier sits alone, staring at the open hostility he just got hit with. Then he exhales, because of course it's happening. His order is going to have to face the coming crisis by themselves. He marches into a makeshift infirmary where his knights are laid up, and one of them snaps to attention, shocked that their commander is here. Justin stays cool, just nodding as he checks everyone's doing fine. He strides up to the doctor and demands a straight answer on the injuries, what's the damage, and how many days they'll need to recover, and the doctor tells him most of the men should be back on their feet after just a few days of rest. The doctor snaps into a tougher reality. The more badly injured patients need more than 7 days of treatment, and Justin listens with locked-in focus, grim-faced as he accepts the report. He swings his gaze to one of the bandaged knights, lays a steady hand on his shoulder, and tells him, "You all fought hard, now it's time to rest," trusting the less wounded to take charge and watch over their people. Justin strides up to Vice Commander Oriel, who's propped up in bed, and asks how he's holding up. Oriel, bandages and all, insists the wounds were shallow and he's already fine. The Vice Commander admits he was bracing for a brutal dressing down, and Justin's fist tightens at his side as he snaps, flat out, that yeah, he's furious. He drops into a seat and lays bare the roots of his fury, then tells Oriel he's been feeling dread for a while, and now it's crystal clear. A monster stampede is about to hit, maybe within the next few days. Oriol bursts into a disbelieving laugh, saying he never imagined he'd live to see a disaster this legendary, and Justin nods like, yeah, that makes sense. Monster stampedes only roll around once every few hundred years. Then Oriol adds that the wounded men are finally getting a full week to rest. News hits Justin like a punch, and he fires back, telling a stunned Oriol that the elite Third Night Order won't be optional this time. And yeah, that means him too, because he's not about to let the stakes get so high without pushing Oriol himself to keep fighting. He lays out the plan from the start and says the scouts are already out in the surrounding areas. Then he hands his subordinate a make-or-break job, read the new reports, pin down where the monster stands right now, and forecast its next move, because every operation from this point on will rise or fall on that intel. Justin's subordinate leans in, earnest as can be, asking if the commander's got a clever plan and begging to help. He'll do whatever it takes, and then a faint, confident smile flickers across Justin's lips as he stares ahead. Yeah, things are about to get busy. Standing before his men, Commander Justin Devendier fires up the room and lays out the terrifying truth. After studying the monster's recent weird behavior, he's sure this is the sign before a full monster stampede, and when one knight blurts that rampages like this are probably just old folktales, doubt immediately sparks in the ranks. He snaps his gaze onto the gathered knights and fires off a straight question: does anyone here know why monster rampages happen? He reveals the truth behind it, a cursed demon stone called the fragment of the evil god, and explains that it quietly drinks in demonic energy for ages. Then, once it's fully saturated, it explodes everything it's hoarded in one terrifying blast. A brutal blast of demonic energy tears through the air, yanking monsters from everywhere, or even birthing fresh ones on the spot, until an unstoppable horde swarms in and starts a full-on, total destruction rampage. He raises two fingers, laying out the choices: smash the root cause, the fragment, before the rampage kicks off, or keep battling those monsters non-stop until the demonic energy runs out. Then he turns to his vice commander and demands, "So what do you think, Arya?" The vice commander's face tightens as he snaps that battling the horde is basically the only move, because the records are almost empty of anyone who's ever managed to smash a demonic stone successfully. Justin agrees and he drops the real problem: you've got to find the fragment first. At first it looks like a plain old stone, but then it quietly starts leaking energy, so faint that only a saint or some top-tier cleric would catch it, and even they usually miss it. It hammers home what happens if they slip. Once the rampage starts, there's no turning back, and that coming disaster would crush the Third Knight Order on its own. Even with the Margrave's help, the damage to the domain would be catastrophic. Knight demands their plan, and Justin snaps back that this approach isn't for them, because the demonic energy is already loose, but the rampage hasn't kicked off yet. Then he declares their goal: strike now in this open window and smash the demonic stone. His men gasp at the commander's razor-sharp intuition, and Justin quickly lays it out. The real trouble was tracking the exact spot. He guessed it had to be the ruined temple deep in the eastern forest, sent scouts to verify it, and they returned. Monsters were flooding in. And right when he starts counting their luck, the story cuts to a grim reminder. One of those scouts lies fallen, still close to the dark, looming ruins. He smirks and shuts it down with a sharp denial, like, sure, in stories it's always the saint who stumbles onto the demonic stone. Cassius, that curly-haired knight, has his words spark a fire in his men. He declares that whoever smashes the stone will be a legend forever, and he instantly throws his hand up for the job, so the commander, seeing that drive, grants him the mission. And he hands the job: hunt down and smash the demonic stone, straight to his unit and to Elliot's unit. One guy spots that Elliot's crew has been leveling up fast, and another chimes in that, sure, they're only working with 2 squires, but their skills are rock solid and more than enough to pull it off, so the whole thing makes him clench his fist in pure celebration. Plan locked in, he grins and says Cassius being there is about to make everything way more interesting. Then he snaps them off, declares he's meeting the Margrave, and walks away while his men scramble to figure out what he just set in motion. He stands before the gathered knights, fires off his last command for the operation. Aller will feed them the exact instructions. Then they gear up for deployment and wait on standby, and his men answer with a thunderous roar. Moments later, he bursts into an ornate office, and Margrave Tolerand rushes to apologize for the sudden summons. The commander just waves it off, saying it's no bother at all, because he's got news to deliver too. The Margrave wastes no time, pouncing on the question: is this about the monster's rampage coming? When he gets the answer, he nods hard, because the clear warning signs have been confirmed. The Margrave stares out the window, face set in steel, and mutters that a disaster like this has no right to strike in his lifetime, then admits his own talk is about the same nightmare. Without wasting a breath, he slams down his verdict: not a single troop can be spared. He lays it all out: sure, he'll cooperate in an emergency, but he's convinced that a tiny boost won't be enough to survive this threat, and the commander hears him. Then a doubt flickers, because it makes him wonder if he's still being left out of trust. He sits with the Margrave's words, muttering that he gets it, then snaps back that the rampage has to be cut off at the source, and hits the Margrave straight on: don't you feel the same? He didn't take the Margrave's refusal lying down. He slammed a game-changing secret on the table. He's already pinned down where the demonic stone is likely hiding. The moment he speaks it, Tolerand is visibly thrown off. The Margrave's mind spiraled. Before his family even took the throne, this land had been smashed again and again by monster rampages. His face set in iron resolve as he weighed the fallout, because if he could finally shatter the evil god's fragment, he'd make the one wish his people had clung to for years come true. Commander Devandiers kept his report rolling, warning that demonic energy was luring monsters to their target, but insisting there was still a shot for a surprise strike with a lean elite crew, and that's when Lord Clement cut in, demanding a concrete plan from Lord Vandiers. He laid out his plan. He'd personally spearhead a suicide squad to smash through the enemy lines, while the rear was covered by Vice Commander Oriol de Larmina, and the Margrave was left reeling, stunned that the commander himself was going to the front. Seeing that commitment, the Margrave thrust out his hand and swore that right now, nobody could be trusted more than the Third Night Order, then demanded Devandir's cooperation. Devandirs hesitated and said they couldn't promise success yet because they still hadn't found the real stone. Even with nerves screaming in his head, he clasped Margrave's hand tight, swore he'd give it everything, and just like that, the alliance was locked in. After that agreement was sealed, Lord Clement stepped in and confirmed their piece of the plan, just like Lord Vandier pushed for, pouring everything into checking, fixing, and standing guard over the city walls. With monster sightings multiplying by the day, the Vandiers nodded that this was the only smart move. Then Lord Clement leaned in and met his gaze, blunt as a sword, admitting he still didn't fully trust him yet. He shoved his challenge at the commander, demanding proof that this change of heart wasn't just talk, and when a smug smirk snapped onto the Vandier's face as he accepted the new pressure, he knew he'd better deliver, or he'd fail to live up to Lord Clement's standards. He declared he still had preparations to handle, and then cut his exit. But when the commander pulled away, Margrave Talleyrand's eyes tracked him like a warning, doubt churning, as he wondered if he could really trust that man. Right beside him, Lord Clement said nothing, though his face screamed the same skepticism. Commander Justin Devandir barrels into the compound and demands, right away, where Oriol is. Then they greet him and tell him the vice commander is locked inside the war room. Justin pushed into the room to find Oriol, who immediately demanded how the meeting went, and Justin told him the answer was more than satisfactory. Then they vowed to take over urban security. The vice commander admits with a shaky breath that there's no way they could have pulled this off alone. Then Justin jumps in, asking about the squad, and Oriol says the men are already double-checking their gear. He said high morale is everything, because when spirits crash, there's nothing anyone can fix. Then he snapped for the latest update on what was going on. The editorial just got word. The scouts still on the site have finally come back, only to report nearly 50 monsters lurking around the ruins, from animals and plants to ogres, and even giant birds. He keeps talking, yeah, monster spikes were expected, but the demonic stone really is sitting inside those ruins, so they can't just rush in. They've got to clear the surrounding area first. Then Justin cuts in, saying he's got a small plan for how to do it. Justin pauses like he's weighing fate itself, then slaps the table and greenlights the plan, only to warn them the barracks stock is running thin, so he orders Oriol to scramble for more, and Oriol immediately jumps on it. Right then, the head chef bursts in and demands to know if the commander is here. Justin snaps around and asks what's going on. The chef huffs that the rations are ready and orders the commander to ready his magic bag. Justin tells the chef he'll be there in a flash, then whips around to Oriol and blurts out an apology. He's got to step out for a bit, while Oriol just waves him off and says, "Go on," as the commander rises and takes the lead. A big tray of sausages hisses away, a steaming pot of stew sits ready, and the rations are lined up like they're calling the mission to start. In the kitchens, the head chef strides up with fresh rations and hands them to Commander Justin Devandir and Vice Commander Oriol, saying he's heard Justin's magic bag adds a time delay, keeping the food hot, though he still warns them to warm it up if it starts to cool. He keeps rattling off the menu, sandwiches, soups, and all kinds of grilled goodies. Then Justin praises the chef for pulling it off on such short notice, and the chef answers, "We've got about 120 servings, is that enough?" The chef barks for his commander, and the commander just nods like he's already plotting the next move. Then Justin grins and says he'll be back before the food's gone, so the leftovers can fuel the victory celebration. Oriol wore worry on his face and stepped up to his commander, warning Justin that his power is a national treasure they can't afford to squander, and that every person in the kitchen is already fighting with them, just in their own way. Choked up by the feeling, Justin whirls toward the staff with fresh fire, orders them to get everything ready for the victory celebration, and promises they'll be waiting for the night to come back safe, while the chef, overwhelmed, blurts out his thanks. The expression snaps into something wild. His face curls into a sharp, predatory grin as he confirms to himself that, yeah, he's really looking forward to it, and a chronicler's note makes it clear. There's zero malice in Justin. Outside, a huge garrison roars to life as Commander Justin Devantir steps before his knights, grilling his subordinates until they swear the supplies are loaded and the support unit is set. Once everything checks out, he nods and decides to run the plan one last time. He'll stand before the whole company and lay out the mission, then climb into a carriage and rattle toward the eastern forest, ditch it at the edge, stomp into the ruins on foot, and smash the demonic stone everyone swears is buried there, tearing through every monster that tries to stop them. Alexander's voice spikes with raw intensity, and he tells them straight up, No one can promise you'll walk back alive from this operation. Then he offers a lifeline, walk away right now, no charges, no backlash, while he presses them for an answer. He shuts his eyes and accepts their silent, united will, and when the knights behind him lock in, there's zero hesitation, just blazing confidence wrapped in cold, grim resolve. His fist clenches so hard his knuckles ache as he hammers home just how dire this mission is, because the Margrave's land is boxed in by forests on 3 sides, and if they mess up, those monsters will flood the town with terrifying ease. His eyes blaze with pure conviction as he roars out his final orders: find that fragment of the evil god and wipe it out for good. He shouts for everyone to steel their hearts and rise for the battle coming next. Response: the knights slam their fists together and roar as one, their spirits exploding sky-high, and once that resolve is locked in, their commander gives the order and officially kicks the operation off. That night, Justin and Oriole climbed aboard horse-drawn carriages, and the whole convoy lurched into motion, leaving the town behind as it rumbled straight into the wilderness. As the carriages rumbled forward, the armed knights were hauled deeper into the wild forest, pushing the journey onward step by terrifying step. The expedition just crushed its first real test. Right in a clearing, wolf-like bee bodies lay torn open as Commander Justin stood over them with his sword out, staring ahead and barking orders for his men to keep moving. His advance shoved the third knight's order right to the brink of the clearing, and in the dim light their silhouettes looked like shadows carved from stone, so one of the men blurted the question everyone feared: is that it? Monsters stood ready in front of them, an enormous horned ogre planted firm beside a massive bear and a snapping wolf, while a hawk-like bird circled overhead, guarding the ruins like living sentinels. The commander stared at the chaos and realized it. Those low-ranking monsters couldn't even slip inside, no matter how badly they tried, and even if the place had been abandoned and rotted away, the temple still clung to some sacred spark. He told his vice commander that monsters would only spill out from the ruins' entrance, at least until he admitted those guards would be brutal opponents, and with a hard, determined stare, Justin said the real test would start after they wiped these guys out, ordering his squad to end the fight fast so they could finally grab a meal and breathe. Once the plan clicked, he barked the final order, and the knights snapped into position, bracing to explode forward in a charge. Up in the sky, a pack of giant hawk-like beasts dives straight down into a hidden structure deep in the forest, raining destruction from above in one crushing strike. In the middle of the chaos, a gloved fist crashes onto the table with no hesitation, pure resolve in every slam. The counterattack hits like lightning. One of the flying beasts gets nailed clean by a projectile, then tears itself apart into a burst of feathers, while down below a knight throws his crossbow up in victory, roaring that he did it as the downed creatures crash toward the ground. In the war room, Officer Aller stared down at a map and snapped out the hard truths. Sure, flame and explosion spells are simple and devastating, but they can torch the forest or blast out noise that summons even more monsters. And the real nightmare, the flying beasts, because on this brutal, uneven terrain, you can't haul heavy hitters like ballistas or catapults where they'd actually matter. Justin laid out his plan to Commander Justin de Vendier, special arrows built for reach and piercing, and pumped up with wind enchantment. Justin nodded, but snapped right back with a problem. They were running low on wind attribute magic stones, and the price was brutal. Aller only grinned, saying that if an emergency hit, His Excellency the Margrave would happily foot the bill. Justin just smirked again, amused that Aller's personality was way better than he expected. Scene's eyes snapped to the woods, because the air fills with chaos as a horde of monsters, led by a hulking magic bear, slams into the knights. Commander Justin Scouts barks orders to the support unit to wipe out everything around them while the main crew targets the biggest threats. And he makes it personal. His own squad is tasked with smashing the magic bear first. With his blade bared, he keeps steering his forces, yelling at the Elliot squad to crush the horde's charge, and then he snaps that he'll personally go after more giant monsters, rallying everyone to move right now. 2 nights in, Arno and Simon break off to face the magic bear head-on, and Arno declares he's taking the first hit, knock it down and end it right there. Simon hypes him up, and Arno rockets into the air, slamming his sword down with a brutal, game-changing strike. His sword crashed into the bear's hide with a brutal clang, but the blade skidded off its armor-hard toughness, jolting shockwaves up his arms and slamming him backward, stunned by how impossible that hide felt. When the attack crashes and burns, Commander Justin snaps into action, eyes blazing as he realizes this thing isn't the usual model, it's a variant. He roars orders for a new plan. If they can't cut it down, they'll drive steel in and go straight for the joints. Then he points Gasper to its side, tells Marius to slip behind it, and slams it together into a coordinated strike. On the ground, the Knights of the Third Order are stuck in a brutal brawl with a terrifying magic bear, rearing up on its hind legs, its armored hide snapping their first strikes aside while they circle it, eyes sharp and wary. One soldier lunges, his blade snapping against the beast's arm with a thunderous clang, still not breaking through its tough hide. Then the bear erupts in a furious roar, jaws stretched wide as it charges. As it bellows, the hooded knight at the front of the squad locks on with fierce focus, his face tightening while he studies the creature's every move and realizes their straight-on attacks are doing absolutely nothing. He spots the opening, barks the order to his subordinate, and tells Marius to trip the beast. Then, from far off, Marius flashes back that he got it. Marius obeys the command, dips low, and hammers a brutal kick into the bear's back leg, sending that massive beast stumbling off balance. The hooded knight grins like he's just won, watching the beast trip over itself, eyes blown wide in shock. "Yeah, that's right," he says under his breath. As the bear lunges forward, mouth wide open, another knight crashes down on the critical moment. He finally gets it. Its hard, protective hairs can't grow inside its mouth. He snarls and drives his sword deep into the exposed flesh. With the creature finally brought down, two knights loom over its corpse. One hypes up his comrade like a hero, and the other exhales in pure relief, saying, "All right, it's done. One down." Just when they finally get a breath, the calm gets ripped away. Some of the men grumble about the sticky gore on their hands, and then their hooded leader snaps at them, roaring that they'd better not drop their guard, because monsters are still closing in all around them. He whips his sword toward the next clash, rallying his men like thunder. Then he blasts the news. Elliot's squad is getting shoved back, and they're moving in right now to reinforce them, while more wolf-like beasts loom on the horizon, screaming that this battle still isn't even close to over. A sly little smile curled at the commander's lips as he pulled one of his men aside, praising Arnaud's sharp judgment like it was pure genius. He planted one foot on the fallen monster's body, sword relaxed in his grip, then snapped at his knights that if they wanted credit, they'd better earn it with real work, and he warned them sharply that if they didn't move fast, he'd take over and do it all himself. Those cutting words made Arnaud's palms go slick with nervous sweat, and all he could spit out was a strained little laugh. The other knights didn't flinch, they just nodded to themselves like, "Yep, this is exactly the brutal power and high demands we expected from our commander." Before those ancient, columned ruins, a band of knights scrambles to size things up. One of them snaps, "Is everything handled? Because if it is, we're picking back up the hunt for that fragment of the evil god, right?" Commander Justin Devontier shuts that idea down on the spot, orders a quick break, and tells his men to tear through their gear, swap out anything that's even slightly off. His subordinate snaps back, acknowledging the order. The knight swallows the response, the word deploy hits the air, and a device in his hand blasts open in a wild flash of light while Justin just stares, frozen. As soon as the deployment hits, they unveil a feast spread out before them, making every knight cheer in pure joy, and Justin yells at everyone to snatch a quick bite right now, before the moment slips away. Then he snaps his focus to the giant slain beast's carcass, decides he's gonna deep fry that rock meat, swaps the soy sauce idea for salt-fried chicken, and even starts weighing whether he should stash it in his magic bag. While Justin stared down at his meal, a knight stepped in and said they'd found 0 demonic stones anywhere nearby, just as Justin had expected, arms crossed, face set in certainty. Justin slams down fresh orders. Justin's squad and the Elliot squad will plunge into the ruins, while the support unit locks down their spot and holds the line until the others come back. Then he delivers a cold warning. If anyone hits the support unit, no backup is coming, because they'll have to fight it off on their own. Aborigine snaps that the commander says reckless stuff, but he still follows the orders. Justin answers with total confidence that they've been trained to take it, then whirls through his troops and demands, "You ready?" After his meal, one knight practically buzzes with motivation and loudly swears he's ready to go. Everyone else erupts in cheers, itching to slam through the mission and feast on the spread their commander cooked up, and then Justin flashes a confident grin as he barks, "Move out." Obeying his command, the knights burst into motion and climb a long, pitch-dark stone staircase, their silhouettes cutting through the blinding light spilling from the ruins' entrance up ahead. The knight plunged into the crushing dark of the ruins, and Commander Justin Evandier snapped his sword up and barked one word, "Light," until the blade blazed. Then one of his men muttered that the gloom was way thicker than expected and begged to grab torches, but the commander shut him down cold, saying they'd be dead weight the moment a fight erupted. Then he announces he's going to charm everyone's gear with that same shining light and orders them to line up, and one knight mutters that the commander's magic makes the whole group operation way easier. As they push deeper, the enchanted glow cuts through the ruins, revealing decaying glory, dust swirling around silent stone statues and shattered archways, like the whole place is a relic from a forgotten era. Their shadows stretch freakishly long across the stone walls as the tiny group pushes deeper into the silent, cavernous halls. The commander stops dead, eyes blazing as he senses something lurking in the pitch-black corridor ahead, something that's hitting him hard, even if I can't feel a thing. He mumbles with total confidence, like he already knows the way. It's that way. Trusting his gut, the party charges ahead and lands right in front of a towering, sealed door, ornate carvings screaming that something huge waits on the other side. Right when they're about to crack it open, he shoots a hand up and stops them cold. One of the knights shrugs and guesses it's a chapel, saying it'd be the perfect hiding spot for their target. A low growl crawls out from beyond that door, and yep, your suspicions hit like a truck. The commander says the evil god's fragment is deeper in, but first they've got to smash the monsters blocking the way. A knight pitches a plan. Have the commander boost himself with enhancement magic, charge in, and let the others clean up the weaker beasts. But Justin shuts it down fast. He declares he'll hand the job of destroying the fragment to Cassius, and Cassius's face snaps to pure shock. He lays out why he chose this, and admits straight up that his magic has its limits, so when the job demands a rapid, enhanced breakthrough, Cassius is the perfect pick. The commander backs it up. Cassius is the fastest and most nimble in the group, still plenty strong, and with his light gear he can move like lightning. A cocky smirk snapped onto Cassius' face as he took the responsibility like it was nothing, while his comrades stared on, brimming with anticipation, ready to move as their commander handed him his very first major mission. Commander Justin Devendier grips one of his knights, Cassius, on the shoulder, and Kashu's spell hums through his body as a boost. Then he barks a straight command, "Follow me." The effect hits instantly. Cassius feels his body turn weightless, a bright glowing aura wrapping around him, and he can't stop marveling at that unreal, amazing rush. Right in front of that huge sealed door, Justin calls the plan out loud. Swinging it open will instantly scream intruders to the monsters inside. Cassius has to draw them off, and if he can, track down the demonic stone. Once that thing is shattered, the rest of the knights will slam in and wipe out every monster still standing. His eyes narrowed like a laser as he started a silent countdown, 3, 2, 1. Justin rockets through the doorway as it blasts open, then swings his sword in a brutal, sweeping arc, energy howling out and frying the entryway in a flash. Inside, the knights stumble into monstrous silhouettes, and Justin bursts into a frantic shout, urging them to grab a fragment of the evil god right now. The knights, Yug included, spies a shadowy, skeletal creature and fires off the question, "Is that the one?" Justin nods, praises Yug's razor-sharp eyes, and orders Cassius forward. Cassius steps up as a hulking, dark, wolf-like beast blocks the path to the spectral threat. Great Beast slams the air with a deafening roar that ricochets through the massive hall, and Justin snaps into action. He orders the other knights to brace themselves and back Cassius as he drives forward. Suddenly, a dagger rockets through the air and buries itself deep into the wolf's head. That sudden, brutal Udaya air hammers into the massive creature, and it slams onto the stone floor, stunned, reeling, and finally knocked out cold. Deep inside the monster-ravaged building, Knight Simon drove his comrade forward, yelling for Cassius to speed up. Cassius flashed gratitude and pushed on with him. Cassius finally hits the pedestal, demonic stone in hand. Then he roars through clenched teeth, thrusting his sword sky-high, pouring every ounce of power into one brutal mission: shatter that cursed artifact. The sword slammed into the stone, but the hit only chipped it. No shatter, no break, so he stumbled back, shocked by how solid it was, then clenched his teeth and drove for a second strike. While he strains with that stone, a hulking shadow crashes over him. Right behind the distracted knight looms a massive, bull-headed monster with a giant axe in hand, and Commander Justin Evandier watches it all, jaw set and eyes locked. The Minotaur rips the air with a guttural roar while Cassius keeps hammering the stone, desperate to shatter it fast. Then the commander snaps into action, yelling at him that it's enough and that he has to run. Ignoring the order, he slams his sword down with everything he's got, one last strike, and a huge crack booms as the demonic stone finally gives way, lighting his face with pure triumphant relief. Just as he's about to bask in victory, the Minotaur roars and lashes out. Its massive axe chops down in a deadly arc straight for the knife he can't afford to lose. Right before the axe can bite, Commander de Vavendier throws himself between the monster and his subordinate, using his own body as a shield, and he bellows, forcing the beast to back off. The Knight of the Third Order rolls in, and towering over it all, a Minotaur raises his sword like a trophy and bellows with wild joy, shouting that he finally wiped out the evil god's fragment. With a thunderous strike, his blow fractures the stone structure behind him until it cracks and collapses. Deep in that massive vaulted hall, a thunderous voice slams out one brutal command: "Stop, I can't see the..." The order hits Justin Devantier's face twists into pure fury, and suddenly the memories slam him from every angle. Nayaki's family yelling for their big brother, his own knights shouting his name, a lone figure posted beside a car, and the silhouette of that knight facing the beast. Rage fuses into a desperate, protective scream for his little brother. Then he clamps down on his poleaxe and roars a command to the Minotaur about the knight's hands. Then he rockets ahead like a streak of lightning, slamming that massive weapon through a lethal arc and roaring at the beast, driving it to dodge, never to land the hit. Charges rattle the air as other enemies crash the scene. Two hooded assailants lift their swords, a goblin-like beast lunges forward, and a monstrous wolf snarls into attack position. Then the Minotaur snaps its head up, stunned by the sudden burst of violence. Up on that high balcony, the commander and the young knight stand in eerie silhouette, framed by the grand hall's windows. Then a devastating attack tears through the air. An unseen strike slams into the Minotaur's head, cracking its skull open with brutal, unstoppable power. The beast's mouth gapes wide, and in one last, brutal, silent scream, agony finally wins. But this strike wasn't meant for the Minotaur at all. Commander Justin freezes, breath tearing in his chest as his armored gauntlet drips with fresh blood. Beneath him, the polished floor is stained by the headless body of the triumphant knight, and his life didn't end at the claws of a monster. It got cut short by his own commander. On the cobblestone street below, the two hooded attackers snapped still, then both stared up as one finally lifted his head, eyes bulging with panic at what was happening above. His face twisted in pure disbelief as he stammered one terrified word, "Commander," like he had to get help right now. Commander Justin Devontier swept over the chaos with a chilling, triumphant smirk, thinking, "I made it in time. This time it's going to be different." He tightened his gauntlet until it creaked, certain one clean strike would crush the threat in front of him and finally silence the trauma still clawing at his past. Then he spoke, voice steady and ice cold, "Well done, Cassius." On the cold stone floor sit two broken halves of a shattered rock. Then a triumphant declaration cracks the air. The evil god's fragment is gone, and Cassius, the knight's spirit, gets the victory. That fragment is gone, but the monsters it summoned refuse to disappear. Wolves and goblin-like brutes huddle on the cobblestones, shaking like leaves as fear of the knights crushes them. When he sees their terror, Commander Justin Devontier stays rock steady in the grand hall, his weapon blazing as it gleams. Then he grabs the moment and shouts that this is their opening to strike back. And right when they're called, the knights crash forward. A commander screams one last order, "Wipe out the enemy," right in front of your eyes, and with a single thunderous shout, they charge down the long staircase. When the dust finally settles, the surviving knights fan out across the battlefield, scanning for danger, while one soldier exhales in relief, realizing the monster attack wasn't as overwhelming as it first looked, and that they could have handled it on their own. Even after their win, one knight couldn't shake the worry. He stared at the clock and demanded answers, asking if the commander and the rest would come back safe since so much time had slipped by, and his companion leaned in, grinning with confidence, saying the commander and the elite Third Knight Order would make it back. One knight just begs the others to make it back soon, but a bitter soldier snaps that if it goes wrong, everyone dies, only to get a brutal rebuke from another knight, who orders him to stop yapping and stand guard at the entrance like his duty demands. An answer finally comes, and Commander Justin bursts onto the scene, drained to the bone yet grinning like he just won the war. His squad yells his name, and he calls out that he's wiped out, but he's still standing. When they press him about the evil god's fragment, he confirms the worst, that the rest of the pieces are safe too. Then he swings his gauntlet hand open, showing the two lifeless fragment pieces, so now it's just a stone drained clean of every trace of demonic energy. Cassius blurts out, "So what's our next move?" And the commander snaps back that their report isn't proof on its own. They'll need a top-ranking cleric to dig in and back it up. Then he whips his gaze back to Cassius and says the real issue: they need to talk. He rips into one of his knights, Cassius, for being way too reckless, and the commander makes it crystal clear. Even if it was a direct order, Cassius should have pulled back from his post to regroup and keep himself alive. The knight snaps a gloved hand over his mouth, a tiny laugh slipping out. Then he starts talking, saying that if it were the commander from a little while ago, he might have done the same, but now everything's different. He shot a confident look upward and swore, without a doubt, that the current commander would figure it out and crush this problem. Odds be damned. The declaration hits and the commander explodes into action. His hand shoots out and clamps onto Cassius' head, yanking a shocked cry out of the knight. Cradling him in place, the commander tells him to stop talking like an adult, because he couldn't just leave him behind, and with a small smirk, he apologizes for the mess that drove Cassius to act on pure desperation. Then the focus snaps back to the knights gathered outside the temple. One of the subordinates reports that the inside is secure, and there's no sign of enemy reinforcements nearby, and the commander wastes no time. The operation is officially over. A sly grin stretched across his face as he clocked it. His men couldn't take it anymore, and once the mission was done, he practically yells, "Lunchtime." The The shout booms out just as the view clears and reveals the nearby building, with its roof caved in like something hit it hard. As the knights grow hungry, a warm sight hits, baskets packed with fresh, golden croquettes and sliced bread, a simple meal that still feels like a feast. An officer's voice slices through the noise, demanding, "Did you all wash your hands?" One after another, the men snap in unison, "Yes." After the last formality is done, he shoots out an enthusiastic command. Everyone dives for the food and drinks without missing a beat. Men dove into their meal with full-on gusto, then celebrated their recent win like it was the loudest victory ever. Commander Justin Devontier can't even taste that simple joy. He grips the dark demon stone fragment tight, thinking, sure, this should win the Margraves over, but in the royal capital, the nobles will still see me as that same cold, evil Justin. He couldn't stop worrying about the cleric sent to investigate the evil god's fragment. If they decided they hated him, they could twist the truth, claim the stone was a fake, and paint the whole thing as a staged show just to chase fame. And if it got bad enough, he might even end up blamed for inciting a riot. Dark reverie gets shattered when one of his knights bursts in, yelling at him, demanding to know why their commander is wearing such a terrifying face. That oyster at night swaggered like a hungry warning, "We're gobbling everything up." Right after, another guy shrugged and said Justin's terrifying face was just his everyday look. Standing off to the side, Justin murmured softly that now everything was settled safely. It'd be great if his men could finally celebrate. Even with the teasing going back and forth, the knights keep digging in, and Justin sits right among them, part of the crew, but clearly miles away, caught in quiet thoughts while the others laugh and carry on. That small act of sharing a meal sparks a memory, and the world snaps back to the past, where a bunch of young boys, one of them looking eerily like Naoki Mayo, crowd onto a wooden floor as an adult figure passes out bottled drinks. Memories start to slip away, and everything shifts onto a new target. Meanwhile, Simon, one of the Third Knight's Order, just sits there, expression locked in neutral as he weighs his next move. He strides through the grass and tells his thoughts to wait. Right now, he's got other things to focus on. Another night, he catches his companion staring at his face. Then he grins and teases Simon about it, so Simon snaps back that he's always throwing in pointless comments. Way out past their reach, the grand royal capital of the Kingdom of Raphael rises, an enormous coastal city packed with life, and a towering castle stands guard above it all, glaring over the whole place. Inside those grand halls, purposeful footsteps thundered across the gleaming floor. An alone, cloaked figure slips down the Nate corridor, heading straight for the blazing room waiting at the far end. The hooded figure snaps into view, Diane de Talleyrand, and she strides into a gorgeous chamber, facing a man at a desk who's calling himself Lord Ernest. He clocks that she looks awful and blurts, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" Then he points out a letter from her father. Monsters are suddenly multiplying across the Talleyrand territory. He tells her to stop worrying and says the night order for their subjugation is already in motion. Then Diane thanks him, though you can still hear a little doubt lurking in her voice. She listens as Lord Ernest calls out the man he sent, Third Night Order Commander, Justin de Vendier, and a flicker of worry twists across her face, because deep down she's scared of what he'll do to her father and the villagers. In a dim, book-stuffed room, Naoki Mayo sits alone at a long table, a single candle sputtering beside him while a grandfather clock ticks like a countdown. He just waits, hands clasped tight, eyes fixed on the seconds slipping by. Suddenly, the door explodes open. Vice Commander Oriel barrels into the room, hands gripping the frame, and shouts that the subjugation force is back. After that announcement, the returning knights roll into the courtyard on a huge wooden cart, cheers exploding all around as they clatter to a stop, and the crowd yells, "Welcome back, great work." One knight perched on his supplies throws a fist into the air and snaps, "I'm wiped out." Knights rush up to Commander Justin Evandier, practically bursting with relief that he's unhurt, and one even can't miss how oddly energized he looks. Yet Justin shuts down the pleasantries fast, saying the whole situation was way too dangerous for smiles, orders the men to rest, and tells Naoki they can't slow down yet because they've got to meet the Margrave first. Then he whips his attention to Florent, the administrative officer, and orders him to scramble a victory celebration fast. Then Justin insists the high priest must be at the head table with them. Florent jumps at the sudden command, but he steadies himself and agrees on the spot. While they head down the road, Naoki tells the commander to finally take a breather until the answer comes in, and Justin nods along, admitting he needs to change his clothes at the very least. Soon they'll burst through the gates of that towering multi-story mansion, and right as they do, a voice booms from inside, shouting that Lord Von Gier has arrived. Inside, Margrave Talleyrand beams and greets them warmly, then confirms the messenger's report is already in, everything worked, and the uprising is crushed. He turns to Justin and thanks him from the heart, but Justin quickly lays it out. They only pulled it off because they had backup from a Margrave's domain. Later, in a stiff, formal room, the Margrave sat down and called for the high priest he'd requested, then leaned in to talk about the deadly urgent matter they'd promised to address earlier. The high priest lays it all out in one breath. Yeah, the source of the monsters is gone, but they pulled a fragment from the wreckage. Then he slams a shattered, glowing stone into view, claiming it looks like a cursed shard of the evil god from the Talaran domain. And with the clock ticking, he points straight at Justin. With your divine eye, tell me what this is, appraise it. He watched the high priest scrutinize the shard, and the grimness on his face said everything. This lingering demonic energy was unlike anything he'd ever seen, and it shook him to the core. He demanded to know if it was safe right now, and Margrave Tally ran shot back that there'd been zero abnormalities during the entire transport. The priest shot him a firm command, purify it, and the Margrave paused, weighing every word, quietly murmuring it to himself. Justin cut in fast, calling out why the Margraves hesitated, only to lay it bare. Purging this malevolent demonic energy for good takes prayers from a pile of top-tier priests, and that means a massive donation to the Grand Cathedral. He weighed the crushing hit this would land on the government, especially if it all happened alongside a demonic stampede, and once he decided, he spun to the Margrave and boldly demanded that the shard of the evil god be handed to him. He leaned in and admitted the stampede stopper was a lucky twist, but the shard itself was a relic so rare it belonged in history's vault, so he was desperate to grab it as rock-solid proof for his report to the king. Then he snapped his gaze to the high priest and declared the shard would be sent straight to the Grand Cathedral in the capital, adding, with a sly grin, that he'd make sure they heard just how deeply the priest was tangled in all of it, and the clergyman let out a quiet, intrigued chuckle. The high priest snapped into agreement, and Justin shot back his thanks. Then Margrave Tolerand cut in fast, reminding the priest this wasn't kindness at all, it was just his duty. A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. His plan had gone off without a hitch. The Grand Cathedral couldn't purify that shard by itself, so they'd get cornered into a money crunch, and he could use that to boost his status with both the royal family and the church. As the meeting wrapped up, the attendants hustled an assistant to the back room to draft a certificate, while the high priest was escorted out, handed a token of thanks for his time, and he accepted it with real gratitude. Alone with the Margrave, Justin sat there while the older man poured out a tired apology, thanking him like it meant something. Talleyrand admitted that ever since the king handed them this land, he couldn't let his family drown in the staggering cost of purification. Justin cut through it and snapped back, then say it straight. With a skeptical stare, he listened as Margrave Talleyrand challenged him, what could have twisted him so hard from the man he used to be. Then Margrave's voice shifted, offering to take custody of any letters Justin wanted to send to His Majesty or to his own daughter. Justin just grinned at the offer and said the water and air here must be doing wonders for him. Then he stared the Margrave straight in the face, his voice laced with a sharp little dare, like he was testing how real this sudden trust really was. He swallowed the Margrave's call and moved on. Tolerand declared that future patrols and security would be run by the Justin soldiers, so the Third Knights could finally lay down and rest, and Justin didn't hesitate. He agreed on the spot, calling it a huge relief, and swore his men would be thrilled to step in. Inside the Grand Estate, Commander Justin Von Deer is in the kitchen, humming while he flips a pancake. Naoki Mayo and a little boy creep up, and Naoki blurts out why he's cooking. With a bright, cheerful grin, Justin says he's making a souvenir for someone he's about to meet. Naoki can't believe Justin's so happy, so he points it out, and Justin laughs back, asking if that smile really looks that weird. Two boys stare with aching longing, and the younger one blurts that yeah, they want some pancakes stacked up and drowned in honey. Justin pauses, thinking hard about it. He cooked up a plan, then announced that the next day's final joint training with the Margrave's Knights would come with a special prize, going to whoever dominates the mock battles. Hearing that, two knights froze in place, faces tightening as their eyes snapped into ruthless, laser-focused determination. Competitive fire ignites through the ranks as the other knights lock in grim, determined stares, eyes forward like they've just found their answers. The next day, Margrave Tolerand stands shoulder to shoulder with Commander Justin and can't miss how razor-thin the soldiers' nerves are. Justin nods. Today is different because he demanded they hit him with everything they've got, even with killing intent. The instructor steps up to the gathered knights and blasts out the rules for the one-on-one mock battles, no slacking, even with wooden swords, then demands they go all in. The knights thunder their agreement, but Naoki watches with a grim face because he knows this drill could still feel like life or death. On the training yard, Naoki squares up across from his very first opponent, the knight who'd practically exploded the moment the commander threw down his challenge. The instructor's voice rips through the room to start the match, and Naoki rockets forward, leaving his opponent staring in shock, mouth agape at how insanely fast he closes in. She snatches the first thrust out of the air, then Naoki slams in right after, dropping his wooden sword in a crushing overhead swing that forces her opponent to scramble just to block, and when their blades collide, it's a violent clash that rattles everything. He crumples to his knees as the final hit slams his wooden sword flying from his grip, and the knight from a Margrave's domain stands over him, victorious, while the mock battle ends. When the victor's announced, Vice Commander Oriole stares at the aftermath with a hard, grim look, then says the opponent's strength proves his earlier training and moves were just routine, because this is the real, deadly face of the Third Knight's Order. His commander, Justin Devontier, fixes him with a razor-sharp stare, clocking the real fighting spirit blazing in every combatant's eyes, and then he can't help wondering just how far that resolve could explode, all sparked by a simple promise of pancakes. The promise of a reward slams through the whole line, and a knight tightens his grip on his practiced sword, knuckles going white as pure anticipation surges. This fierce determination ignites and spreads like wildfire, and a line of knights forms, ready, eyes locked in one unwavering promise of the promised me. Watching it all, Commander Justin shoots a sly smirk, then it hardens into pure, burning pride. He feels his men's weighty presence and realizes their mission isn't just surviving monster rampages, it's something bigger. So he decides he'll honor the fighters he commands. At his side, Oriole lets out a quiet chuckle. From afar, Margrave Tolerand watches with pure disgust, snapping that his own men are getting lured by nothing but food, grumbling that they should have locked in lodging already, not gotten sidetracked, and calling them greedy, demanding they carry themselves with some dignity. But he can't just shut it all down with a bitter laugh. He knows his people's showboating has a real reason behind it. Justin Devontier, the man from the Third Knight's Order, is impossible to read. The Margrave stares at his bond with the commander and can't stop spiraling, because if Justin is an ally, he's solid as a rock, and if he's an enemy, he's pure nightmare fuel, so Talleyrand is left wrestling with one brutal question. Which one is he really? In the training hall, that short breath of peace snaps shut, an iron-voiced command booms out, and the next two fighters are called forward to clash for real, hungry for victory and fighting spirit blazing. A few days later, right in the Margrave's main courtyard, the Third Knight's Order is packing up for departure at last. Carriages line the ground, soldiers buzz around in a rush, and a voice rings out, thanking everyone for the help they've given. Just as Commander Justin Devontier swung into the saddle and got ready to ride out, he leaned in to talk with Naoki, who admitted, with a heavy heart, that it killed him to see them go and that he'd truly loved their cooking chats, wishing he'd been able to teach the commander even more recipes. The commander grins and drops a bold deal. If Naoki ever gets formally knighted and buys himself a mansion, he'll swing by and recruit him personally, and Naoki's eyes flare with pure determination as he snatches the offer without hesitation. With the farewells finally wrapped up, Justin snapped his focus to his men. He threw one last speech, then roared the command for the whole company to tear off. Naoki and the rest of the kitchen crew bowed, with full respect, as the knight rides out past the courtyard. The knight column rides off, and one soldier stretches hard and grins at his buddies. Yes, we're finally heading back to the royal capital. Then he sighs, laughing, because he knows it's going to be a long, rough march with camp for a while. Their conversation cuts off mid-sentence as they barrel around the corner onto the town's main street, and straight ahead, a wall of people crowds both sides of the road. As the knight finally rolls in, the whole crowd detonates into a massive, happy roar, hands up, cheering like they've just won the world. Voices roar through the crowd, and right then a woman yells her gratitude to the Third Knight's Order, while the man next to her swears he heard they just saved the whole town from a brutal catastrophe. They're blown away by the warm welcome. One says the Margrave must have told everyone to meet them, while another grins and says getting thanked feels amazing. Then, as they roll on, a kid's voice slices through the cheering. He's shouting for his big brother. As the night started to fade, a young boy yanked his father's sleeve and begged him to talk to Commander Justin too, and when the commander heard it, he flashed a warm smile and told them it was a really good thing. The boy snapped his head straight to the commander, blurted out a huge thank you for the pancakes, and declared they were insanely delicious. Then his sister jumped in, saying the Margrave even handed jobs to the soldiers who'd been hurt. Swamped with emotion, their father blurted out his heartfelt thanks, saying he'd just learned Commander Von Deer had personally brokered the deal for them. Then, now on his mount, Justin turned back and urged the man to hold his family close. As the boy waved goodbye, begging him to come visit again, the commander swore he'd return someday. Way back near the line, one knight leaned in and told Naoki he couldn't believe how massive the crowd was as they got ready to send him off. Then a sharp formal shout cut through the air, ordering everyone to salute Commander Vendir and the Third Knight's Order of the Kingdom of Lafias, and the whole group of knights raised their fists together. Commander Justin stood at the front and fired up his troops with a sharp speech, while Vice Commander Oriole loomed beside him. Then he shouted the call for the Third Knights to march in proud formation straight toward the royal capital, and the moment they started, the whole line erupted in a thunderous cheer like the journey was already legend. In the grand throne room, the king's voice booms through the air, demanding the one in front of him to lift their head. He turns to Justin Devontier and says, "I've got the gist from the monster subjugation report, but I want the real details straight from you." Justin nods quietly, ready to talk. From the side of the hall, Prince Ernest watches the exchange unfold, his face set in cold, calculated focus. Diana Talleyrand's eyes cut through the room, blazing with raw, no-holds-barred hostility, and even the nobles behind her, including the prince, seem to wear the same unmistakable contempt. While he stays bowed, Justin feels those cold stares pressing in from every direction, Prince Ernest, the high priest, and Lady Diane all glaring at him. He kicks off his formal report to the king, and says his first job was to crush the monsters crawling out of the Talleyrand Margraviate. Then the investigation hits, and it turns out this wasn't isolated chaos at all, but the setup for a full monster stampede. He keeps talking, dead sure the growing monster swarm has one source, and he pins it on the evil god's scattered fragments. So he hunts them down one by one, smashing every last piece until the stampede is finally stopped. The king can't believe a word of it and demands proof, so Justin slams a jagged, dark chunk of rock onto the table and insists it's one of the evil god's shattered fragments. The high priest steps forward and demands Justin hand over the fragment, and Justin nods right away, accepting his plea and agreeing. He watches as the high priest studies the dark, throbbing fragment, eyes narrowing as he snaps that this is trouble you can't ignore. The moment the confirmation lands, a shockwave rips through the court. Prince Ernest and every noble freezes in disbelief. They start firing questions. Did the infamous Third Knights really pull off the miracle and stop a monster stampede on their own? From his throne, the king shuts down the commotion and declares the evil god's fragment is the real deal, and that a letter sealed from the grave tallies with the Third Knight's order, even praising it. He makes it clear. No matter what they've done before, this act right here can't be denied. Justin Devontier drops into a deep bow, and the king praises his outstanding work, then tells him to take his reward. Justin just smiles and humbly thanks him. Across the room, Prince Ernest leans in fast to Diane de Talleyrand, who looks crushed with fear and clutches his arm like it's life support. He shoots her a calm whisper, telling her she doesn't have to worry because he'll protect her. Justin watches their exchange, and the moment he sees it, his face tightens as his gloved fist clenches hard, because if Ernest plans to claim Diane as his reward, then Justin knows he'll have to step up and make his own exact demand. He strides up to the throne and declares, loud and proud, that his men earned this victory. Then he demands the reward money be handed to them for big upgrades, fresh renovations for the barracks and better meals every single day. That weird request drops like a bomb on the queen. She blurts meals under her breath, stunned, while the whole court stares in tense silence. Her husband, the king, throws his head back and explodes into thunderous laughter, a grin stretched across his face, then says the request is something a kid would come up with. He tells Justin that asking for a knight commander is way too modest, and that he's got bigger problems to fix first, like keeping his men's morale alive. Then the king brings up Talleyrand's letter, saying it pointed to a shift in his daughter's attitude, and it looks like the truth is landing hard. Seated on his throne, the king hears his commander's request and grants it with a satisfied nod, and Prince Ernest stands there watching, chin up, eyes calm, that small knowing smile on his face, while inside he thinks, everything that just happened has flipped his whole life upside down. Elsewhere, Diana Talleyrand is left totally stunned by this wild twist, her eyes bulging with confusion and a sharp edge of fear as she tries to make sense of it all, desperately begging to know what on earth that man is thinking. Prince Ernest Seaths can't stop wondering what that man really is, because it's hard to believe he's the same guy his own parents used to stare at with such sharp interest, calling him depraved and inhuman, while the prince locks in a promise. He'll never forget every insolent remark that spills from his mouth. Worried there's a secret motive lurking, he leans in and peers through those fancy double doors. Then he spots 3 silhouettes inside the room, and he immediately scrambles to uncover what the man is really planning. Inside the room, Justin Devontier hovers a glowing orb above a maid's hand while Oreo watches in awe, but the maid and another servant look totally lost. Then Prince Ernest storms in, roaring and demanding to know exactly what Vendier is doing there. He lunges forward without a second thought, throws his arms wide, and plants himself right between Vendier and the maids, blocking them like a shield. He barrels up to Von Deer and vows he'll report the whole incident to his father, while Von Deer doesn't even blink, just calmly says everything's fine now that he's here. And that's when the prince snaps to the truth. Von Deer really was acting this whole time back in the earlier audience. Smirk lets out a faint laugh, knowing exactly how Von Deer's lips twitch when the prince blows up, because it's all just too funny. Enraged, Prince Ernest explodes, snarling that Von Deer can't call himself a ruler on nothing but assumptions, his voice dripping with pure contempt. Deer calmly snaps back that the prince's questions are rigged because he's just trying to squeeze out the answer he already wants, and the panicked maid stammers up, trembling as she tries to speak to the prince. She drops to her knees and spills every detail. Right when she was seconds away from serving tea, her nerves hit, the pot slipped, and she burned herself, and that's exactly when she swears Lord Vandier stepped in and started healing magic on the spot. From the window, the maid's voice rings out, thanking Von Gier again and again, while he waves it off and tells her to rest, warning that the healing will drain her and leave the prince stunned into pure silence. Ernest froze in place, his accusation hitting like a dead punch, while in the doorway the maid who tried to shield him bowed her head, her silence screaming he'd been wrong. He snapped his head toward Justin Vandier, demanding to know what kind of stunt he was pulling, while Vandier stayed cool and asked if the prince was really implying that doing good deeds was somehow something to sneer at. He kept going, voice steady as steel, saying the prince's suspicion was totally earned after all the trouble Vandier had put him through before, and Vandier had to admit, yeah, he had a lot to answer for too. His face snapped into a sharp, knowing grin, because that's exactly why he broke it down. He wanted to prove he was sincere with what he did, not just what he said. Prince Ernest froze on the spot, words choking in his throat, and all he could stammer was a warning to Vandier to stop anything that might get twisted later. Then he bolted out fast, desperate to get away. Vandier and Oriel strode off, and the vice commander snapped that his commander was showing way too much favoritism, so Vandier admitted, yeah, maybe he'd been a bit childish with how he handled it. Later, holed up behind his desk, he replayed the whole run-in and finally understood the real poison. The prince's hatred didn't start with him. It spilled over from an old incident involving his older brother, and now the prince was aiming it at his door too. The worst part, the prince was already under a microscope. Then an attendant burst in, snapping him back to the present. Get ready, the evening banquet was coming. In a fancy room fit for royalty, Prince Ernest tells Justin Vandier he's got time to spare before the banquet kicks off, while Justin just sprawls in his chair and groans that it's a total drag. He pushed out toward an empty courtyard, and the prince leaned in, saying, "You've been on the road forever, Justin, so let's stretch your legs and kill some time with a stroll." Justin hesitates about roaming the royal castle on his own, but Ernest waves it off and smirks that Justin was never big on all those stiff formalities. Then he tells him they'll be watching from the shadows, so just go for it. Justin keeps his voice low and agrees. After taking the advice, he slips out alone and strolls through the grand, arched colonnade, and as the sun sinks, the whole capital chills down, almost like even the Talleyrando knows it's time to cool off. Get cut off by a sudden, unstoppable sneeze. He turns his gaze outward, halts in place, and stares into the courtyard, wondering who's there. Then he spots two figures lounging on a bench far off. In the same courtyard, Diane de Tolleran's friend tells her to swap into something warmer, but Diane, shaking with cold, snaps back that she can't, because if she changes now, she'll be late for her duties to the princess. Suddenly, a heavy coat slides over her bare shoulders, draping warm fabric in the blink of an eye. She gasps and looks up. Right then, Justin Devontier is behind her, and he's already draped his long coat around her like he'd been there the whole time. While her friend keeps shouting his name, Justin tells Diane, "Don't stress." Then he reminds her, since she'll be the future crown princess, she's got to look after her body. Totally flustered, Diane fires back that it's a waste of money and that she's not worth all that care. He won't let it go and demands his coat back, but Justin shuts him down, telling her to hurry and get changed fast, because sneezing through the whole banquet would be disrespectful, and showing up late would hand a certain princess the perfect excuse to start complaining. Her friend bursts in, shouting for Diane to get back to her room, and Diane panics. She nods fast, grabs the coat tight, and turns to leave as Justin watches them disappear. She strides away, flicks one last glance over her shoulder, thanks him for worrying, then insists it wasn't needed, while Justin stands there watching her fade, a faint smile playing at his lips, unreadable as ever. The second he's out of sight, she snatches the coat to her chest, brows tight with worry, and can't shake the feeling that his little gesture is hiding something bigger. Moments later, Prince Ernest lunges at Justin and yanks him by the collar, jaw clenched. He roars that Diane's been his betrothed since their academy days, then snarls what Justin's up to after coming for her. When he phases in, he just stands there with his arms crossed. Justin can't help thinking he'll never forgive how Ernest treats Diane, and that's exactly why he can't stand him. Then a sudden sneeze hits, and Justin decides it's time to bounce too, completely clueless that this little meeting is the spark for a brand new storm. Beneath a blazing full moon, a towering mansion looms in the dark sky, its windows all shut, like it's holding its breath. As the third knight's order trudges down the long road, one growls about being hungry and begs for a late meal, another daydreams about how amazing dinner at the castle would taste, and a third scans the distance, wondering if their commander is back, while another pushes, asking if he's actually staying the night. The lounge door bursts open, and Commander Justin Vendier tumbles backward across the sofa, groaning like every ounce of exhaustion hit at once, while his vice commander, Oriel, stays perfectly calm nearby. He greets him and clocks the exhaustion right away, and Justin admits it. Dinner with the royal family was so tense he couldn't taste a single bite, and getting grilled by the commander-in-chief only crushed him even more. Flashback finally pulls back the curtain on his stress. Some noble woman spills palace gossip, claiming the commander is wildly popular, even grinning at children, then drops the bomb. Was he just acting like Diane doesn't matter? Justin's face twists the moment he remembers. The king stepped in himself, grilling him on whether he was really Von Deer or just some fake wearing his face, like someone else had hijacked his body, and Justin's irritation kept climbing. Right beside them, Diane Nadeleren and Prince Ernest drilled Justin with stern, disapproving stares, turning his exasperation up to a breaking point. Back in the present, Justin flashes a grin at Oriol and admits that, no matter the ordeal, it turned out to be a meaningful time. Oriol nods right back, saying it's true. The commander's reputation has been climbing fast. Knight slips into the room and warns him not to underestimate them. Then one of them quips about souvenirs, and Justin, finally sitting up, says he's got great news. It's just not the kind you can hold. He leans back with a smug grin, drops the bomb that all their brutal hard work stopping the monster stampede has earned them a whole week off, and then reveals he also poured the reward money into a massive upgrade of their worn-out barracks, even building a brand new shower room. The commander's announcement hit his men like lightning, and pure excitement surged through the ranks as one curly-haired knight threw his fist up in celebration. Another nodded that after all that training, they just had to sit tight and wait for the bath to be ready, and a third knight even joked that life would be way easier if they could pull purification magic the way their commander did. Her bright chatter got cut off mid-sentence when the commander's voice snapped in. Then he tacked on one last reward, a permanent bump to their food budget, and when the words hit, the knights seemed to freeze and disbelief plastered their faces. He leaned in, that wide, almost predatory grin snapping across his face, as he promised them they could eat that delicious food anytime they wanted, and the disbelief from the knight crumbled instantly into a roaring, joyful cheer. He just smirked and watched their wild celebration, thinking, good work pays off. Then I stepped in and told him she'd have the cooks ready his lifetime supply of food, and he only nodded back like he'd already gotten it. Later, alone in his fancy room, he popped open a bottle of wine, savoring the moment, though he couldn't stop thinking about that dinner party's perfect food and the insulting little portions. Then it hit him. His expedition allowance still had plenty left. His eyes tore across the room, landing on the storage space he barely ever touched. A sly grin snapped onto his lips as an idea ignited. He lifted his glass and swore he'd build his dream, a mini kitchen in his private room. Then chaos hit. One of his knights, Simon, burst through the door, shouting excitedly that the Heat had heard about the plan to turn his shower room into something real. Two of his knights cornered him and demanded answers. Was that leftover expedition allowance meant for him, and were they getting a cut too? Before he could respond, a frantic pounding shook the outside of the room, and a tired voice complained about the brutal grind of teaching the Order's members. Justice Devandier lays out his plan to his men, waving his hands like an instructor. One side is cooking over an open fire, the other is using real kitchen gear, like a proper frying pan. Naoki Mayo and two other knights peer in from a nearby doorway as several men, following his orders, bust their butts building a brick oven and snapping cabinets into place. After a while, Justin finally shows up, smirk blazing, eyes locked on their work, and he just leans in and asks, "Is it done?" He stares at the finished room and grins. There's a fridge and an oven humming with magical power, basically the same comfort appliances he had back in his old world. With a determined stare, he snaps his long hair back into place, and his shadow swells over the ground, like it's ready to swallow the night, and then he grins, "All right, let's start." Now he's got on an apron and a bandana, gripping a rolling pin like a weapon, and he declares, loud and proud, that he's about to put this kitchen to the test. Me. While some knights catch their breath, one of them pipes up, "Let's hit the town," and the rest nod along like they're ready to roll. While they're marching along, one knight suddenly halts, his nose catching a sweet, inviting aroma. Then the next one blurts, "That smells like something," and wonders if their commander is cooking in the kitchen he built, and right then it hits him. He thrusts a finger ahead and shouts, "That's it." He and his buddy smash through the nearest door, yelling for the commander, and he blurted out, So what tasty masterpiece are you cooking that makes this whole corridor smell this amazing? Annoyed and blindfolded, Justin blocks their path and barks that he wants to know why nobody knocked, while the first knight rushes back through the doorway to apologize a mile a minute. Then another knight slips in, peering around the corner like he's up to something, and asks if Justin's test baking sweets for the new kitchen. One of his men can't help himself and blurts, asking if the food's ready to dig into, but Justin just turns a little and says he was about to serve it with tea, then snaps at the night watch to not touch it without permission, while another subordinate stands there, rattled by his own comrades and all the patients staring back. The pastries and tea sat perfectly on the table, and the knight asked again, "Is it okay if I eat?" Off panel, Justin nodded them on, but warned he'd only made one for each person, and that was more than enough to send the knight grinning. The knights take one bite, and their faces instantly light up with pure shock and joy, blurting out that it's unbelievably delicious. One even swears it makes him crave a cup of tea on the spot. Justin grabs a taste too, and a calm, satisfied little smile settles in as he quietly approves his own work. Knight chimes in, swearing it's more than delicious enough, but Justin lets out a tiny sigh and admits the final result isn't quite right yet. He's still got to learn the gear. Naoki Mayo clocks his commander's relentless perfectionism. He swivels to his men with a sly grin and tells them he baked those sweets just to test the cooking gear, and that they won't be seeing his desserts again for a long while behind him their hopes crash and their faces fall hard. Naoki steps up and tells him he gets it, clocking that Justin somehow hates using eggs like it's a tiny detail only a meticulous person would care about. Then Naoki flashes a bright grin and asks the commander to cook them something else next time. The quest really hit him hard. Now Justin is back behind the counter, slamming together a fresh batch of dough, and realizing his sweet recipe collection is way too thin, so he decides to hunt down a recipe book and find something new to bake.